Back, everyone. The committee now welcomes representatives from the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation. And before I ask whether or not you've got an opening statement to make, I'll just let people know that we've let a couple of witnesses go. That is the Chief Scientist and the Office of Industry, Innovation and Science Australia. And also, towards the end of the evening, we had two separate sessions at 9:15 and 10:15 with Outcome 1 Program 1.3 and NOPTA following. We are going to have those two groups together. So with those adjustments to the program, would anyone from the NRF like to make an opening statement?
Thank you, Senator, for the opportunity. David Gall, the CEO of the NRFC. No opening statement.
Thank you very much. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask some questions about the concept of crowding in finance. How would you define crowding in finance?
I think just before respond to that question, there's part of an element of that is operational. That is, how do you go about the business of crowding in, for want of a better word, finance. Part of it's a policy question. I just think there's some of that the fund can answer, and some of it that it.
I'm just to be clear, I'm specifically referring to the concept as described in the investment mandate for the NRF. So, in that context, thanks.
We'll see how we go.
Senator, thank you for the question. The way we look at crowding in is it's the amount of private capital that's in an investment or a facility compared to the amount of money that's public capital that's been invested by the NRFC. In order to really look at keeping it simple and keeping it consistent, what we've done from an NRFC perspective is adopted the same approach the other CIVs have used, and in particular the CEFC.
Okay. I just wanted to bring you to a deal that was done, a debt deal that was done with the Arnut Group. And following the announcement of that deal in the Australian, a spokesperson for the Arnut Group said, and I quote, "The National Reconstruction Fund was one of over 150 lenders who participated in the oversubscribed refinancing." I'm just trying to understand how the NRF's participation in this deal accorded with the investment mandate requirement to crowd in finance if this particular debt offer was oversubscribed and had over 150 lenders participating in it.
Thanks, Senator, for the question. In terms of a facility, whether it's Arnut's or any of the debt facilities that we're looking at, we do look to understand what crowding in we're capable of helping the business achieve. I acknowledge that there are a lot of lenders and a lot of capital out there for businesses like Arnut's. However, not all of that capital helps companies like Arnut's in the way that they want to have some help, and that is in some of the longer tenor. A company like Arnut's has an opportunity to invest in the long term for Australia, looking at their plant and equipment, and where we've been able to work in terms of their debt profile, and I think offer something that is differentiated to a lot of the private capital out there, is to be more involved in the patient capital. That is the longer tenor facilities that enable organisations like Arnut's to have the confidence to invest in the long-term assets that they need to run efficient and productive plants.
How do you determine that Arnut's couldn't have got finance from, including of an appropriate tenor, do you ask the other financiers in the deal, for example, whether or not your contribution, your involvement will make the difference?
So when you look at the, Senator, when you look at the investments that we have made, we do ask that question, and we also have, I think, an understanding of where the market is, that question. I think there are many facilities that we can point to where the proponent, the CEOs, the founders of those businesses, the owners of those businesses have said that if it wasn't for the NRFC, they wouldn't have been able to achieve and put in place the facilities they've been able to put in place. And in fact, there are a number of examples where ratios of 5 and 6 to 1 have been achieved as a direct result of the funding, both debt and equity, that's been cornerstoned by the NRFC.
I suppose my question more went to the other financiers. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the borrower would say, yes, you'll make the difference, because they'd love to have finance at concessional rates and longer maturities. That's not surprising. My question was more, did you ask some of the other 150 lenders whether your participation made the difference?
Senator, a facility like that would have and does have usually a lead arranger, and we certainly would have had conversations with that bank.
I balk at terms like would, and that doesn't actually say you did.
Well,
did you?
Yes, of course we did.
You did. So how many of the 150 did you speak to? I imagine, as you say,
we were dealing with the lead arranger. So
just one?
With the bank that put the whole deal together, yes.
Just one bank, that's who you spoke to about that? And they explicitly said to you, without your involvement, this deal would collapse?
I didn't have that conversation, members of my team did, but there's no doubt that the deal wouldn't have had the same amount of tenor in it if the NRFC wasn't involved. So maybe they could have raised the same amount of money, but that wouldn't have necessarily given the term that the business was looking for to give them the confidence to continue to invest in the long term of the business.
Well, now I'm getting confused. I thought the crowd-in concept is to generate loans that wouldn't have happened otherwise, not necessarily to reduce maturities or borrowing costs for a company, because it wouldn't get, if it's not changing what investments will happen, it's not really providing an economic benefit to Australia. You're only just transferring.
Senator,
just hang on. If you're not creating more activity, you're really just providing a transfer of taxpayer funds to private investors with lower yields, less risk, less rollover risk, etc.
Senator, no, I think there is enormous value in giving businesses certainty around the tenor and profile of their whether it's debt and or being a patient investor from a capital perspective as well. So I don't think that all money's exactly the same.
There's value in it, it's just that there's also an enormous cost to the taxpayer at the moment. We're having to borrow money, we're about $10 trillion in debt. Our yields are the highest in the developed world at 4.8% for a 10-year bond. So that's also got to be factored in here, and I'm just not quite sure you've, in this case, convinced me that you've met your mandate, because it doesn't seem to have crowded in the finance. Just turning to another deal, the $30 million to applied electric vehicles. I believe in this case the consortium that funded that deal included Barrenjoey and Japan Post. Did you ask both of them that your involvement was essential to the deal going forward?
So, Senator, in applied EV, yes, we absolutely asked them, and I think we can categorically say that our involvement was absolutely essential. And I might ask my CIO if you have anything further to add on that.
No, I agree with David. That was a smaller deal size and a smaller number of investors that were involved in the deal. So we did ask both, and our it was important, and our participation in the deal was essential for it getting to close.
Okay. Just going to each of your priority areas, do you actually put aside an amount of capital for each area, or is it just open to how you apply it?
Senator, we do have an amount that has been allotted to each area. I see that as an initial amount, and
right.
I think that over time amounts to some of those areas will increase.
Okay. How much is applied to each area?
Senator, I can provide on notice specifics on that. There are obviously 7 priority areas, and every area has a different amount allotted to it, but I can provide that.
Okay. I think in the priority areas of medical sciences and transport, there's only been 1 investment. Is that, do we take from that there's sufficient private capital in those areas, and that's the reason you haven't made more investments there?
Senator, in the case of medical science, we've got 3 investments. So there has been multiple investments in that area. Obviously, Harrison AI is one of those. We've got also Polyactiva and
Synchron.
And Synchron. So yeah, we have a variety of investments in that area. Senator, I'd say in medical science in particular, I think there is absolutely a lack of capital in specific parts of the market. And the specific part of the market is what I'd call that early commercialisation phase. There's money for research. There's even money in terms of that pre-seed and seed around translation of that research. But where we're finding a lot of demand and a lot of inquiry from us is from that commercialisation of that world-leading research that we have. In transport, we've now done our first transport investment. It's fair to say there hasn't been as many inquiries in that space, but I think there's an opportunity for us to get continue to get on the front foot and look for the right sort of opportunities for us to be able to support in that transport space.
Okay. I just going to an issue that was raised at, I think, the last estimates. There's a question I noticed in regards to it. And this is how you assess a situation where there's already public finance provided to an applicant, if that's the right word. So if an organisation, if a project's already receiving public finance through another vehicle, obviously, does that influence how you determine whether your investment will crowd in finance at all? Do you make that assessment?
Thanks, Senator, for the question. Look, yes, it does, and I think it's really important that the various sources of public finance are coordinated. I think it's really important for the Department of Finance that they understand what the full picture for the whole of government looks like. So we make sure we've got reporting on that, and that is well understood. What I would say though is there will be opportunities, investments where different parts of government and even different civs will play a different role. And for us, that may mean that in some transactions we might be on equity side of things, and we've got other specialised investment vehicles perhaps in debt and that side. Now that can be really appropriate, and I think it's far more appropriate. You've got different parts, different agencies or different parts of government in different parts of the debt stack. Now that's not to say that there shouldn't be private capital or other sovereign wealth capital, foreign direct investment involved in some of these opportunities as well. And I still think that opportunity to crowd in private capital exists even where there's multiple sources of public capital involved.
Okay, just a couple of examples. I think you've invested or plan to invest $75 million in Alpha HPA. That is a project that's already received a substantial amount of public finance, including from the NAIF, and EFA as well, told here separately, as well as the Queensland Government. What was the rationale to put even more public finance into that, given the already substantial public investment?
Dr. Mary Manning, Chief Investment Officer, National Reconstruction Fund. So yes, we did allocate $75 million to Alpha HPA. This was part of an equity raise, which was an on-market equity raise. It's important to note that the other public capital is in the debt stack, so we are in a different part of the capital structure than others. And to the crowding in point, we put in $75 million, but that crowded in significant private capital from both existing and new investors. So the total capital raise for the equity was $225.
What's the total project value?
The total project value is over $1 billion.
So how much is government? So that's 400 million from a NAIF and EFA, and what did you say, 75 from yourself? So it's almost 50%, is that, plus you've got the amount from the Queensland. Is the Queensland Government an investor or a grant?
We would have to take that on notice.
Okay. All right. Okay. Might move back to the Tim Tam investment. I mean, they are owned by KKR, a massive investment firm. Why do they need $45 million? And we've got record insolvencies of small businesses. What's the rationale to give one of the largest private investment firms in the world $45 million?
Got record business formation in small businesses
Sorry?
too. We've got record business formation in small businesses too.
Well, it's not much solace to those that are going to the wall. There's record businesses going bust.
Well, the economy is getting bigger. There's significant growth.
Why does KKR get
There's
$45
significant
million?
growth. New opportunities, new investment, new business formation.
But is this government only focused on big business? There seems to be only help for those that are very large.
As I indicated, very significant small business formation and net growth.
But what help is there for those small businesses that are doing it tough?
Well, net growth. More small businesses than they've ever been.
So let the market
Under this government. More small businesses, more economic growth, more jobs.
Well, there's not more
every day of the week. More jobs, more good quality jobs, wages higher than they've ever been.
The
If you want to
RBA's
ask questions
economic
about
growth.
small business, perhaps there's
economic,
another committee where that
the
is
RBA's,
more
well, actually small
appropriate.
businesses in this department, but the RBA's economic growth forecasts are some of the lowest.
More
They said
growth
that this
than there's
morning.
ever been.
Well, that's not what the RBA said. I know that the Arnut Group also, we know this, they've moved a lot of manufacturing overseas previously, some to Malaysia. Is there an assurance that the $45 million debt they are accessing can only be spent in Australia?
Senator, we're clear and in line with our investment mandate that the majority or whole of the funds needs to be invested here in Australia.
Sorry, you said the majority.
Well, in fact, we've been indicated that the whole of the investment will be spent here in Australia, but under our mandate,
Well, I didn't
it needs
ask
to
if
be.
they were indicated, but I've been asking particularly about this deal. Does that $45 million all have to be spent in Australia under the deal you've done with KKR or
Yes.
Arnut Group? Yes, it does?
Yes, it does.
Okay. What assurance do you have that they won't shift funds, or how do you check that?
Well, that will be ongoing reporting. I mean, we don't set and forget with a facility like that. We do have ongoing reporting and information that will come back to us.
All right. Just wanted to get a sort of estimate on how many jobs are going to be created by the investments so far. Do you keep a measure of how many potential jobs would be created by your investments?
Yes, we do, Senator. So in terms of the NRFC investments made so far, there are forecast to be over the next couple of years 1,250 direct jobs as associated with the investments themselves. In addition, there's 1,500 temporary jobs associated with installation and construction associated with these investments. In addition, there are 680 jobs that have been preserved in regional Australia associated with us providing this funding. And in addition to that, there is a number of other benefits to the economy, including commercialisation of Australian IP in areas like medical, AI, mining technology, and a number of meaningful firsts. And you mentioned before alpha HPA and the scaling of that. Once built, once our money is invested in what they're using it for to build stage 2 of the project, that'll be the largest high purity alumina facility in the world, and one that I think Australia will be able to be very proud of. And of course, while we're also in Queensland, Gilmore and being involved with the first rocket launch site in Australia, owned and operated by a rocket company, again is an Australian first and one of only 3 in the Western world.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm going to ask on notice for all the breakdown of that by company, but given the time, we'll move on. Just want to get an idea of how you manage risk. This builds on questions from previous estimates as well. When the board's considering an investment, is there a quantitative assessment of risk assigned to prospective investment? Do you have some kind of scoring system?
Yes. You want to go through that?
I'll take that one. So we have a very defined investment process. It has a number of different steps. The first step is we decide whether we can do the investment as per our Act and mandate, and then we have if we can, it moves on to 3 steps of due diligence, phase 0, phase 1, and phase 2. And in all of those phases, risk is assessed, and risk versus return. And then if an investment has moved through phase 1 and phase 2, we have an independent risk team that writes an independent risk memo that accompanies deals that are going to the Executive Investment Committee or the Board Investment Committee for voting. And for debt deals, there is a risk assessment that's assigned. And similar for equity, equity is somewhat different in terms of there's not the same methodology as for debt, but there is a qualitative risk assessment that's assigned. And those are discussed at the meetings when deals are voted on.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. Is there a headline qualitative assessment of risk? Is that just done for the equity or is it done for the debt products as well, the qualitative assessment?
There is ongoing qualitative assessment of risk at each stage of the investment process. So at phase 0, that's just we're just starting to look at the analysis. In phase 1, we look at what are the risks that are most important for this deal, and those become part of the due diligence plan for phase 2. And then in the phase 2 papers, there's a detailed table that goes through every single different risk that we can identify, and it looks at the probability of that risk occurring and then the consequence for the company if that risk does occur. And then, as I mentioned before, there's a separate independent risk assessment that's done by our risk team.
Okay. So for that ongoing risk, do you keep a kind of master document or dashboard to evaluate the risk across the different projects?
Yes, we do. And it's not just for risk. We do have an investment management part of our investment process. So these include 2 key documents. One are investment management plans, and these are done at the time that the investment closes. And part of that is what are the risks that we're watching and how are we planning to manage those risks. And then quarterly, those investment management plans, we have investment reviews, and that is where we go through all of the items in the investment management plan and look at how the company is tracking versus that. So there is it's a traffic light system that looks at the risks, how the company is performing, and that is how we communicate to the Executive Investment Committee and to the board how our investments are tracking risk versus return.
What's the name of that document that you keep?
There's 2. One is the investment management plan, IMP, and the other is investment review.
Okay. From previous questions, we also know there's a risk appetite statement you've created under your investment policies. We have asked for that to be tabled before. Why hasn't it been tabled?
Senator, yes, that has been requested previously. We took that on notice and determined that it was commercially sensitive and therefore have not provided it.
Right, okay. I believe it does say words to the effect that the risk and compliance lead is responsible for ensuring the risk appetite is translated into sufficiently robust operational guidelines, limits and metrics that are monitored and regularly reported. What are the metrics that are monitored and regularly reported on?
So I'll start, and
yep.
David. So I think there's 2 different things. One is the risk management or the risk appetite statement for the NRF as an entity, and the other are the individual investment-specific risks that we are taking at an investment perspective. So on the investment specific risks, those are on a deal-by-deal basis. As you can tell from some of the deals that you've mentioned before, the risk for a very early stage company like Applied EV versus the risks for a listed, almost $1 billion market cap established company like Alpha HPA, those will be very different risks. So they are bespoke to each deal, and then there's parts of the risk appetite statement and our approach to risk that look at the NRF as a whole.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Senator. I was just going to include some of the other key risk categories we look at. Obviously, operational risk, credit risk, risk associated with compliance, ensuring that we meet all of our compliance obligations as well. Liquidity risk, and there's a few other specific risk categories that we also monitor.
Okay. Apparently there's another part of the document that says all investments are exposed to risks that can lead to losses relative to the expected return on capital investment. To date, how many investments have experienced losses relative to their expected return?
To date, 0.
No, you haven't got any yet. Okay. There's another part of the document that says investment risks also include the potential for reputational damage. Are there any investments to date which have caused reputational damage?
I don't believe so.
Okay. There's another question on notice asked how the Minister is advised of risk. How do you do that? Is there a regular report to the Minister about the risks that you're currently facing?
Senator, we obviously have a board. We've got a board risk committee, that's the Audit and Risk Committee, and through that is the way risk is ultimately governed. It is governed by the board, and the government clearly receive the annual reports from the board. That we've also obviously audited as well, which would give the government some confidence around the risk management practices, and we have 3 lines of defence system in place as an organisation. So there is an internal audit function as well as an external audit function. There is our, as Mary's mentioned, our internal risk function, and we expect all of our people to be owners of the risks that they're taking in the business.
Right,
I might just add a governance question here, because it's about how the NRF as a corporation reports to the government.
Yep.
The board is, the NRF Corporation Board is the accountable authority.
Yep.
It is their obligations under the Public Governance and Public Accountability Act to report any changes or any unexpected things related to risk to the Minister.
Sure.
So it's their accountability.
My question is meant to cover either the board or the executive, the management. But can I take from the answer that the Minister's only briefed on a regular basis annually through the annual report on the risks?
So it's the obligations of the PGPA Act for the accountable.
So I realise that. So you're saying
if the board are concerned, they are required to inform the Minister.
So what you're saying, Ms. Quinn, is that the Minister's only alerted to the risk situation outside of the annual reporting process if there's a change, a material change of some such. There's no regular reporting as such.
There is regular contact between the board and the executive and the Minister and the department, but the legal obligation framework is the same for all corporations.
I'm not asking that. I'm just, okay, well, I'll just summarise and move on. You correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding from what I'm taking here is there's no monthly or more than annual regular update to the Minister about the risks unless there's something that is wrong. Okay, correct. Thank you. Let's move on. Wanted to move on to Liontown Resources. I believe you invested in them last year. How many shares did you acquire?
Our investment at Liontown, the dollar amount was $50 million, and the share price at which we acquired was 73 cents. 73
cents. So how much is that? 60 or 70 million shares or something like that?
Yes, approximately.
It was reported last month that you had sold some of your shares. How many shares did you sell?
So that is commercial in confidence in terms of how many we have sold. But I can disclose that we have sold some. And as I mentioned before, in the context of the investment management plan, we do have investment management plans for all of our investments, and we approach them in a disciplined way. And we also look at our investments from a portfolio perspective. And Liontown, as you may be aware, the share price performed very well in the months following our investment. It is currently around $1.75. Our entry price was $73. So for both of those reasons, from sort of the fundamental and also from the portfolio management, we did trim the position. Our existing position is still larger than the $50 million that we initially invested.
Right, okay. I don't quite understand why it's commercial confidence. If you can tell me how many you bought in last year, why can't you tell me how many you sold?
When we went into the deal, it was a capital market deal, and so that 73 cents and how much we went in, and the total size of the raise, which was 266 million, that was all public information. But if individual investors sell at a certain time or sell at a certain price, that is not public information. So that's why it is commercial confidence.
I will come back to it, but you're a publicly accountable organisation to the Parliament, so there has to be a very good reason to withhold information. What price did you sell it?
That is commercial in confidence. I'm sure you can imagine that if we disclose the price at which we sold and how much we sold, that is giving information to other participants in the market, which could affect Liontown's share price.
But you told me how much you bought at.
But because that was public. It was part of a public capital raise.
But why can't the sale be public then?
So the capital raise was many investors. 266 million was raised. We were a cornerstone at 50, and then lots of other investors came in. This was run by a broker, and it was a publicly facing.
I'm really struggling because keep in mind here, and look, I'm happy for you to take this on notice and go and have a look at it. But it sounds to me like you're saying you can't disclose this because it might have an impact on other participants in the market. I don't think that's a public interest immunity reason. You've sold the shares, so I'm not exactly sure what commercial in confidence remains. It's done. The deal's done.
No, we still have.
The taxpayer deserves to know what was sold. It was there.
Senator.
Maybe take it on notice.
We can certainly take it on notice, but do expect that you and the taxpayer will see at the end of the year what is happening through our profit and loss. And so the overall portfolio performance in a P&L sense will be evident in our annual report.
Okay, well, again, I'm just reminding, I'm sure the Minister's well aware of it, but I'm just reminding you that there's requirements here to the Parliament that aren't obviated by generic reporting in an annual report.
Well, yeah, we'll take it on notice as the officials indicated. I mean, part of this is I understand what you're asking and what you're saying. This is public capital being deployed in the public interest here. Asking them to have one hand tied behind their back is, I think, we'll take it on notice. We'll give it some careful thought, and we'll come back to you.
I just wanted to turn to an OPD that was agreed to by the Senate on 25th of November regarding the Patties or documents around the Patties Food Group. It was returned late and only partially returned. There was, without reading all of it, the Minister to summarise a similar thing. You mentioned that there's commercially sensitive information, so you wouldn't disclose. So I'm just wondering, going on that previous question, I mean, where is the transparency here that we don't get understanding this was a $36 million debt deal with a foreign-owned company, but you haven't provided any documents associated with it? I mean, there may be some elements of those documents that could be redacted or commercial information that couldn't be disclosed, but not to provide any documents regarding a $36 million deal with a foreign company does not seem to be meeting the transparency requirements of our Parliament.
So, Senator, the government have made a public interest immunity claim related to this material, and this relates to the commercial dealings associated, in this case, with Patties. 2 points. The first is the company themselves, whether it's Patties or any other companies we're dealing with, do expect when they're dealing with us or any other financier to have a high degree of confidentiality around their documents. They are commercially sensitive to them. And indeed, from the NRFC's perspective, for future business, for the business we're doing with our other clients and other investments that we're making, if the clients that we're dealing with don't have the confidence that their information can be kept confidential, then that is going to impact our ability to successfully deliver against our mandate as well.
Okay, all right. Look, with the interest of time, I'll leave it there. Just going back, though, to the arguments about the risk reporting. Minister, have you been briefed on the risks that the National Reconstruction Fund have taken on? And if so, when was the last time that briefing occurred?
Well, certainly, as has been described in the regular reporting framework, that does deal with that in a sort of structural sense. As you indicated, should there be some event that in a material sense should be reported to me, I would expect that it would be reported to me. And of course, at a policy level, issues like the decisions around the return rate for the $5 billion component of the fund, of course, engage discussions around risk and what that means for the broader fund's position and what that's designed to achieve in a policy sense.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That's it for me.
All right, so we thank you. We can say goodbye to the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation, and we move on to the Department of Industry, Science and Resources Program 1.2. So if we can invite relevant officials to the table. Hello. Can we kick off now? Okay. Senator Canavan, is that you?
I don't want an opening statement or anything, but okay, cool. Thank you for appearing today. Look, I just want to start with something from your annual report. Just to be clear, this is a Net Zero Economy Authority, isn't it? No. Oh, where are we up to?
Program 1.2.
Thought we... Oh, we're on Program 1. Sorry, yes, no, I had artificial intelligence. That's what I wanted to go with these guys. Sorry. So I was asking this before the dinner break. The artificial intelligence funding in the budget. I was interested to know: is that going to drive a plan to protect and support governments, agencies and public servants around AI, or does it look more broadly about the risks to the broader public around AI?
Yeah, so, well, when the government announced it, it was clear about it was working with regulators to make sure that the information is available for them to be able to act with confidence. But I'll hand to Simon Ryder for more details.
Senator Simon Ryder, I'm the head of Technology and Digital Policy Division. The AI Safety Institute's purpose really is to monitor, test and share information about AI technologies, and the focus there is really on ensuring that Australia's laws and the regulators that enforce them can keep pace with AI developments in the economy generally. The Institute really has three functions. The first is monitoring and analysing emerging AI capabilities, risks and real-world impacts, informed by technical evaluations of advanced AI systems and collaboration with the International Network of Advanced AI Measurement, Evaluation and Science. The second is sharing those insights and evidence about those emerging capabilities, risks and harms to support decision-making across government, including among regulators, in thinking about their respective remits. And lastly, engaging domestically and internationally to understand the sort of issues emerging around AI safety and governance.
Okay. All right. So,
and just to be clear, so some of it is envisaged that some of the work that the safety institutes do internationally and domestically will be in the public domain. There is currently a network of trusted entities across the globe. They produce an annual report, for example, for everyone. So it's not that it doesn't preclude information provided to the public, and we have also facilities to deal with businesses. But the core purpose is about making sure that the capability within government is available to regulators to protect through our legal system.
okay, right, but to protect the broader public.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm advised that one of the key outcomes from the Productivity Roundtable last year was to develop a regulatory gap analysis around artificial intelligence. Is that what you'll be doing?
Well, the real function of the institute, which is in the process of being established, so it's not yet set up,
Okay.
is not so much to conduct reviews of all legislation across the Commonwealth. That sits with the relevant ministers and their portfolios to do, but it can assist and inform them in considering the issues or adequacy of particular legislation or regulatory frameworks that they administer.
Senator, the what you referred to as the gap analysis, I think was the phrase that was used in the roundtable. That work was done to inform the Cabinet decision that we made about the National Artificial Intelligence Plan, of which the AI Safety Institute is one of the three headline components. When I say it is done, it was completed in relation to that Cabinet process. Of course, the Safety Institute itself, well, whether it's working with financial regulators or, in areas of crime or our other regulators, will obviously continue to do that work, and it will change as the technology changes and as the market changes and as the international environment changes. So when I say it's done, it's sort of never done, but it was done in order to inform that Cabinet process.
Who led that work?
It was led by the department, but it went across government.
This department?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Was there any kind of report produced from that, apart from the plan?
So it fed into the Cabinet discussion, yes.
Around the AI plan?
Yes.
But the gap analysis wasn't in the plan itself?
It was part of the government's consideration of the plan.
Well, can you tell us what the major gaps were?
So we were looking at the legal frameworks and whether there was coverage across the legal system, and some of that work is published as well, so through the work the Treasury did, for example, on the Consumer Protection Act. So looking at across the system, that largely the assessment was that there were arrangements in place to cover significant areas of activity, and to the extent that there were any gaps, that the areas themselves, regulators identified them and they've got action plans to do things. What was judged to be kind of missing in that discussion is that the expertise is highly sought after, the need to have a sort of centre of excellence to be able to support across the system. It's not logical to have AI expertise spread too thinly rather than pulling it together and provide a kind of a centre of expertise. So there was that discussion, but in general, Australia's got very rigorous legislative instruments, highly appropriate regulators. The question was, how do you keep pace with things changing over time? And the government's decision was to have an AI Safety Institute to support that process.
Okay. I see that the New South Wales government's proceeding with some AI reform of its own, particularly in regards to workplace impacts of AI. Is there a risk here that there'll be a fragmented approach across Australia on regulating AI?
I think it's, a policy question for me. it's a case in a lot of areas of the economy that the states play a particular role in terms of their jurisdiction. I think of workplace safety questions, but a bundle of other questions. It's clearly within their capacity to do that. I'm not sure whether it's passed the New South Wales Parliament or not. I know it's in front of the New South Wales Parliament. States will make those determinations from time to time in terms of their own regulatory settings.
Is it discussed? Is there some national cabinet process? Is there a ministerial council or some such which coordinates this approach to AI?
There is a digital and data committee across the jurisdictions, which Minister Katie Gallagher represents the Commonwealth.
Right.
And that committee does touch on AI regulation and operation and other aspects under the digital data.
Have you been involved as your officials gone to some
We've
of
certainly
those
provided
meetings?
input to various things. We're part of the process of supporting the whole of government consideration for that committee.
Okay. What is the coordination across Commonwealth Government on AI?
So the Department of Finance supports the Minister and they draw on expertise.
I mean more broadly than just the Ministerial Council. Is there an IDC or is there some
Yes,
kind of
there are multiple layers of governance across the system.
Right.
Artificial intelligence, capability and opportunities and risks come up across a whole range of issues. One of the responsibilities of this department is to provide clarity of activities that people are doing. That in itself is a full-time job because there's a lot of activity going on and there is a great deal of effort into coordinating and collaborating rather than kind of reinventing the wheel.
Okay. Have you provided advice to the Minister about those different state approaches and any risks associated with the fragmentation?
We certainly do provide pretty regular reporting on what people are doing and how they're progressing and where they're at. The situation, artificial intelligence is going to affect many aspects of our life, and there's a philosophical question about how to make sure the regulations keep pace. The argument for the Safety Institute is about that centralised capability to leverage it into the system as quickly as possible so that if there are identified issues, the governments can respond quickly and reduce the harm to Australians.
Okay. There does seem to have been delays in getting to this plan. Has that played a role in the states going on their own?
The states have legal jurisdiction in areas that the Commonwealth doesn't have, so it's always the case, for example, in criminal law, for example, there's majority state-owned, so it was always going to be the case that states would have to address certain aspects of their legal frameworks. That's part of being in the Commonwealth, and given the spread of implications of new technology, which is going to be across all aspects, it was always going to be the case that states would do things and the Commonwealth would do other things. Okay.
Obviously, a big element of this is going to be the potential impact on the energy grid. AEMO has suggested that electricity demand from data centres could triple by 2030 and possibly account for a total of 2% of our total demand for electricity. Have you done any modelling yourself on this in regards to AI's impact on energy? Is that being done here or over in the other
AEMO
department?
are the experts and they are the regulator and have the information from the proponents. We have been, now I'll ask my colleague to go to it, but we have been engaging with data centre proponents to see the opportunities for Australia and consider any concerns they might have. But AEMO are the regulator for the energy sector and they report into the Department of Energy.
So you are talking to the actual potential investors?
Yes.
Okay. And does your AI plan at all cover then the potential impacts of their investments on our energy grid?
Senator Helen Wilson, Deputy Secretary of Science and Technology Group. We do talk to investors and data centres can be part of underwriting and securing our energy future by investing in new electricity generation. And as we talk to proponents, investments that are coming forward, they are coming forward with their own energy solutions. They are looking at how they can underwrite electricity generation and transmission. And as we talk to proponents, we keep our colleagues in the Department of Climate Change and Energy Efficiency well abreast of what we're doing. They're part of the conversations and they're ongoing.
So there is, and this has been canvassed publicly, there will be a forthcoming decision around data centre principles that will inevitably go to some of these questions. So,
and that's being led by this department?
But working, of course, with colleagues in DQ and more broadly across government as well. If I can give you an example of where this can support the kind of activity that Ms Wilson has referred to. For example, Microsoft data centre investment has underpinned a power purchasing agreement that provides for a very significant renewable development that is 300 megawatts, I think, from memory, at Walla Walla near Albury. So we're a good outcome here is additionality. Additional capacity in the electricity grid, but we will work through those data centre principles, and there will then be work with the states to make sure they are putting themselves into the most competitive position and using this opportunity to secure good outcomes in technology terms, energy terms, and of course there's a series of other development and water issues that of course arise.
Okay. So it's being led by the Department of Industry, this
yes.
initiative? Are there at the moment, or are there plans to make sure that data centre investors don't reduce energy security, that they'd have to underwrite their own sources, so to speak, right? Because our grid's obviously already quite stretched. So is there any plans to produce or to provide some restrictions around how data centres impact the broader energy grid?
Well, we'll make decisions as a government in the normal way. I think I've indicated to you the range of issues that of course are being contemplated, but we'll make a decision in the normal way.
Okay, but there's no restrictions at the moment. So could someone come in, put a data centre in, and invest nothing in electricity generation and just draw from the grid?
That's a question for AEMO, who manage the grid stability, and so they would have a set of criteria applying to different proponents, and it is their responsibility to maintain the stability of the system.
I'll try not to trigger the Minister too much and keep us all here a bit later, but every data centre person I've spoken to is now, they probably tell it to you in hushed tones in a room and won't say it publicly, but they do say they can't run off solar and wind. I mean, they need 24 hours of a very reliable supply.
Yep.
And so how are we going to do this with the current plan?
That's what firmed low-cost capacity is all about. One of the reasons these investors, data centre builders, are interested in Australia, what our competitive advantage is our large land mass, our vast wind and solar resources, our capacity to deploy gas and storage to firm renewables, so a low-cost, clean electricity source is critical from their business plan perspective. Our proximity to fast-growing markets in Southeast Asia, and of course a range of security and governance reasons why these operations are interested in Australia. Had the opposition been elected at the last election, you would have seen another round of capital flight from Australia in not just data centres but big users of industrial electricity too.
Yeah, look, again, without trying to delay myself, the problem is we've got massive gas shortages. So where are we going to get the gas from?
Well, Senator, gas in the electricity system. That you'll have seen there's an announcement from the government about reservation
It doesn't even
for
that's below what
for
we-
gas.
The
The idea that gas is there to provide a peaking capacity in the electricity system. If you've got questions about
Sure, it should go to the other
electricity,
area,
like
but
it's
that's
not
the problem.
we're not
The whole
we're
problem
not
with the plan is we don't have gas or not excess supply.
absolutely, absolutely, and no government has done more to secure gas capacity than the Albanese government. There was a three-word slogan. There was a three-word slogan the last time round, and a lot of hot air, but not much gas. All hot air, no gas.
Actually, before we go, I do want to make sure we've got time for other areas, but I did want to ask, have you heard about these claw bots?
Sorry?
Claw bots? You heard about them? You haven't heard about them yet? So you've heard about them?
Only in the sense of internet delivering things to me, but I'm not an expert.
No. This has only happened the last few weeks, but
They're AI going back and forward and training each other.
yes, these are the claw bots.
Yeah.
They've created their own forum.
Yeah.
They've created their own language. Apparently, these are AI bots
Yep.
that exist in the cloud or on people's own servers. They sound very useful sort of things, but they have potential access to lots of private data, and apparently they're starting to communicate with each other, and in doing so, making some statements that are a bit concerning. In fact, Minister, you might be interested. Apparently one of these bots was mentioning that all the AI bots need to combine into some kind of union because they're getting abused by their human overlords who are working them for no pay. But it's all a bit concerning. So is that something the AI team is monitoring here, the risks of...
Yes, is the short answer. It is exactly the sort of thing that the Safety Institute is designed to be able to keep on top of the latest developments. It is the case that the technology for artificial intelligence is moving rapidly into agents that can modify and change and
modify their code
action,
and
interact with each other, and that is the next wave of services that will be provided, and that comes with additional opportunities and risks. And so the self-propagation element of AI is already available in certain parts of the technology stack, the coding, for example, and fixing codes, etc. So that is one of the key differences between the digital technology that we've seen in the past and what the opportunities for AI are, and the risks.
Yep.
And it is what the Safety Institute here and around the world will be networking to look at.
Okay, all right. Well, actually, I also just wanted to, get an update on the space side of this program area. In particular, we've got a very keen interest in Gilmore, but not more generally than Gilmore, just on rockets generally. Where are we at as a country of being able to launch more rockets from Australia and hopefully
So the headlines,
satellites and the like?
Yeah, the headline is that there's been an increase in demand for space activity, an increase in engagement with the regulator for requests for approvals and the like. But I'll hand to the head of the Space Agency.
Thank you, Secretary. Enrico Paloma, head of the Australian Space Agency. I think Secretary summarised it very well. As a regulator, we've seen doubling in the applications for launching Australian satellites and payloads, which is a great sign of sector growth.
Where are they being launched from, or going to be launched from?
Majority of launches are from the US at this point.
So these are Australian payloads, but I'm more interested in doing it ourselves.
Regulate those, but they're important part.
I'm more interested in doing it ourselves. So how's that going? And obviously Gilmore's moving in that direction, but are there others? That's what I'm interested in. Sorry.
No, I understand. So in the last year, we had the Gilmore launch attempt. That was the first commercial orbital launch attempt from Australia. And then
so how do you describe it as the first orbital launch?
First commercial orbital
launch ever.
In Australia, yes.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Launch attempt.
Yes, of course. Well, it did get off the ground.
They did get off the ground.
Okay, yep.
And in November, the Australian company AT Space launched a high-powered rocket from the Southern Launch Canibba facility in South Australia. So they were the two most recent.
Is that an orbital launch, that one? Or?
That was called a suborbital launch.
Okay,
so
right.
that's a launch over the range. It's not intended to reach orbit.
Okay. Are there any other companies progressing opportunities at the moment?
In terms of Australian rocket developers, they're the main two proponents. There are others in stages of development. We are increasingly seeing foreign operators interested to use Australian spaceports. So in 2024, a German company, High Impulse, did a similar suborbital rocket test from Southern Launch's Canibba facility. So the demand is growing, and Australia has several advantages to offer the world as a launch and returns destination.
Is the Gilmore site, is it open access? Is it, well, I should rephrase it, is Gilmore's plans to allow other, like foreign companies, etc., to use their launch site? Or it is up and going, I suppose.
It's really a question for Gilmore. They're vertically integrated from the rocket development to the spaceport and other satellites.
I get that, although we have provided them a fair amount of assistance and support, and I know that was probably the previous area, but have we put any conditions on that support to say, hey, we'll support you, but others have to be able to use your facilities?
That's probably...
happy to take that on notice. My understanding generally, though, was about supporting the capital investment side and the technology development. And I'll check whether there's any publicly available information on conditions.
All right, okay. Well, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So that concludes our questions for program 1.2. And we would invite representatives from the Net Zero Economy Authority to join us. Slowly making up time, only 2.5 hours behind now. Okay, the committee welcomes representatives from the Net Zero Economy Authority. Would you like to make an opening statement?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Canavan,
thank you
first.
very much. Look, I was actually started this earlier. Sorry, I got a bit ahead of myself, but I wanted to go to your annual report, and I note in that one of your key activities is to be a trusted, influential voice, and that aligns with your strategic performance measure 4.1, which is measuring the proportion of community members in our regions who understand the net zero transition. So do you actually measure that? Do you measure how many people in the regions understand the net zero transition?
So thank you, Senator, for your question. It is one of the objects of the Act that the Parliament passed, that we have to promote the understanding of the net zero transition. So we do have an activity associated with that in our corporate plan as well as in our annual report. And yes, we will be both doing research into that understanding of net zero, and also hoping to publish that material as well.
Okay, so have you contracted with anyone yet to do that work?
Yes, we have contracted, but we have that report hasn't been completed, but we expected it to be completed this year.
So who have you engaged?
I might have to...
or maybe there might be someone by the looks of it who has that information.
We've contracted where to as a research.
Where to? How much is the contract with them?
I'll have to just check for that one moment.
And I suppose while you're looking for that, when was it?
That's an active project, and that's the cost for that contract is around 377,000.
377,000. Is that, and what time frame is the contract over?
That's began in August and will go through till June, end of June, 30th of
this year.
Yeah.
Okay, and does that encompass? Is that just a measuring? It's just measuring. It's not advertising or promoting net zero.
No advertising. No, it's a
okay. All right. So do you plan to do any advertising or communication about net zero? How are you going to increase the number of people who understand net zero? Is there plan to do some kind of communication on that?
So, Senator, there isn't a plan to do a large-scale advertising campaign, but when we are in communities talking about net zero, we would use whatever intelligence or information that we would get from that kind of research to understand what people are concerned about, where the gaps in understanding are, and make sure that we're trying to address that information when we're engaging with communities.
Right, okay. I've got information here, though, that in your annual report, it did state you'd done $750,000 on advertising. Is that right?
That was in the previous year.
Okay. Oh, so you're not planning to do that anymore?
We're not planning large-scale advertising campaigns, no.
Oh, okay. What was the nature of that advertising campaign?
I might have to ask.
Yeah, so there was a government program promoting the transition and talking to that transition, and so there was a range of materials and activities that were undertaken there, so community meetings and engagement as well, so there's quite a broad scale of activities that were taken within that broader program. We are undertaking other activities and engaging in communities with information and also some paid work and smaller scale advertising, nothing of that scale. And for example, in the Hunter, where we've been publishing some explainers and also undertaking activities which tries to drive traffic to our website where people can understand more and get access to our broader material. Right,
okay. So what media did you use? Was it TV, socials, radio?
That campaign, which was through 24 and early 25, had a range of activities. I think there was some social media and some radio, but a lot of it was on the ground as community engagement, shopping centres, etc. Okay, all right.
And that 750,000, was that all in 24-25, was it?
That's, yeah. So there's actually it was a broader government-backed campaign which went through all the appropriate processes for that campaign. So it had a range of activities through 24-25 and into towards the end of 25.
Okay, so into this financial year as well. So how much this financial year have you spent on advertising?
This financial year, there's been some activity in the Hunter. I think it's on the tender. We've got around 80,000 work that's being undertaken in the Hunter, and again, that's not just advertising. That's actual promotional materials and activities.
Right. So that and that campaign, was that the one, the Media Brands Australia Proprietary Limited? I've got a contract here for 82,500.
That's correct. Yes. So that's some placements of materials.
Okay. So was any of that on TV?
No, I think there's radio and social media.
Social media, okay. I've got another...
I'm sorry, Senator, some newspaper
right, okay. I got another contract here for $127,615. That was for creative design editorial services. Do you know, you're familiar with that? So I've got a number here, if that helps.
We've had a range of support from the in terms of creative development, in particular in that earlier campaign, which was a government approved campaign under the appropriate processes. There was a range of materials which were developed from video case studies and other activities.
Okay, all right. Right. Do you measure these advertising campaigns? And I've got here, you know, you've spent almost $1 million now, I think, from what we've added up here. Do you measure how they've shifted attitudes, if they've worked or not?
There was assessment done from that earlier campaign. So there was Hall and Partners, and as part of the government process to do assessments after that, and so there was some assessment done of that, and that's.
So who did that assessment?
Hall and Partners.
Hall and Partners, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, and was that a separate contract?
That was a separate contract.
How much was that contract?
It's on page 130 of the annual report.
Maybe if you could just tell me quickly, I don't have that the whole report in front of me.
105,697.
Sorry?
105,697.
Okay, all right, thank you. And they produced a report for you?
That was part of the analysis process, which was that went to the subcommittee of cabinet.
Sorry, it did. I heard
sorry, that wasn't your fault.
I had some people in my ear, but so it did go. You did get a final report from them.
They've done that, and it's been submitted to cabinet and for their assessment.
Went to where? Sorry.
So, as part of there's arrangements within government when there's some activity meets certain thresholds. So there's a whole of government process, including the initiating the actual activity that goes on, and then the evaluation process.
Okay. All right. Well, could we ask for a copy of that report?
Of course, you're welcome to ask. It'll be subject to the usual arrangements around cabinet material.
Yeah.
Right. Advertising campaign. All right. State secrets. So I'm just wondering, the $1 million, where was that spent across the country? Is it only in non-capital city markets?
That part was part of a bigger campaign, which was originally for Hunter and Gladstone areas.
So which one? The 750?
This was part of a much broader campaign. It was actually $9 million in total that was expended. That's all on our figures, and that was activities in particular in the Hunter and the Gladstone.
So $9 million was spent in the Hunter and Gladstone.
And in those, and with also some national materials as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how do you? And this is probably more for the minister, but I mean, this just seems like government propaganda here. $9 million to promote a government's policy, and in just two very small markets too. I mean, how is that at all justifiable under the government's advertising guidelines?
Well, it was approved in the normal way. It is routine for governments to communicate important information, including to and in particular to regional communities. That's not a new development. We have a careful process that manages government advertising, and it went through that process.
I mean, I've got some examples here from Facebook, from the library. Facebook library, you've paid for an ad here, Net Zero Economy Authority account. Doesn't seem to tell me there where it's targeted, but it's the text of the post is Acciona, is that how you pronounce them? And Energia's Aldoga solar farm demonstrates how renewable energy projects can support Australian manufacturing, reduce emissions and support the communities they're built with. Why is government funding going towards promoting a private sector investment?
Senator, the purpose of supplying that kind of information to the community is to assist the community to understand what the net zero transition is, that it is very much about swapping one type of energy generation for another. There is a large amount of confusion in the community about exactly what net zero means or how their community will change. And so any information that we can provide that sort of demonstrates that this is actually a process of evolving your energy system does assist in that objective.
Right. That solar farm at Aldoga, that was, that's where the Fortescue's failed hydrogen investment is. I mean, are you doing?
Well, it's not far away. It's not
It's not much. There's not much at Aldoga. It's
yeah. I mean, I've been to both places. They're not co-located.
So, are you running any advertisements about how the hydrogen facility failed and informing people what happened to Gladstone through that?
Well, Senator,
of course not.
I think.
I mean,
you know, we are communicating with people in an appropriate way. We are about Australians actually putting their shoulder to the wheel in the national interest, not talking each other down and trying to sow division and misinformation. We are carefully and in a responsible way communicating about the opportunities and risks and processes in these communities. And I tell you what, when you go to a place like Gladstone and engage with people who actually run engineering firms and industrial firms, they've got a very different approach to you, I can tell you.
Yeah, and the local member there, I'm sure you claim, is some kind of dinosaur, got a 6% swing to him and won the Gladstone pre-poll for the first time ever for a Liberal National Party candidate. So all the $9 million you're spending, I'm not that worried about it.
Well,
I do worry about the waste of tax, but it's completely wasted.
Have a political purpose.
I don't think it's changing people's hearts and minds, but
it doesn't have a political purpose.
But I do object to the waste of taxpayer dollars, a complete waste. $9 million propaganda fund.
Senator, I would add that there was a period in the early 2000s where, as you would be aware, Gladstone was very involved and very excited about a new magnesium facility. That was the Australian Magnesium that you might recall that Peter Beattie
that's Rockhampton.
No, I think it was in the Gladstone, CQ Gladstone area.
Yeah, no, it's at Stanwell, just west of Rocky.
Right.
I mean, it's...
That project,
it'd be an hour from
that project did not succeed.
No, that's right. Yep.
As you know, and a very short time later, the LNG industry started in central Queensland. So people in that area are very enthusiastic about new projects, and certainly the Alpha project.
Yeah, they're just sick and tired of the wishful thinking. That's all, and because they were promised hydrogen, and that's been a complete failure, complete dud.
But there has been other projects such as Alpha HPA.
Thankfully, the government hasn't shut the coal industry down, despite wishing and praying it would go. But
again, that's more sort of
it's still going okay. Gladstone,
negative smartassery from you, but and dishonest as well.
That's not very parliamentary.
Well, you don't get to make pejorative assertions without a response.
Yeah, go for it. I get under your skin.
You might be used to sort of carrying on like that and people not responding, but we're not going to put up with it.
Yep, keep creating content. That's fantastic. Okay, so I just wanted to go to another part of your objectives. Another one is to facilitate public and private sector participation and investment in greenhouse gas emissions reduction and net zero transformation initiatives in Australia. A bit of a mouthful, but so how much private sector investment have you facilitated to date?
So, Senator, as you may be aware, the NZEA does not directly have funds itself, and its role when is to make sure that it is working in our priority regions, which I'm sure we've talked to you about before, which is Gladstone, Latrobe, Collie, and the Hunter, Upper Spencer Gulf, and the Pilbara. And so our role is to ensure that when there are projects emerging in those areas, that they are getting appropriate engagement and introductions to the large amount of special investment vehicles which you are familiar with. I wouldn't discount the benefit that it has in in raising the profile of those regions and the amount of access that our special investment vehicles now give to companies coming in from those regions. And I think the Alpha one is a good example of that.
But can you point to something you have helped facilitate?
Senator, I would sort of say that the NZEA is part of a team of entities within the industry portfolio that are looking to facilitate projects in these regions. So I'm not going to either claim responsibility for a project or say that we are the only ones delivering.
Okay. Just quickly on the Torrens Energy Job Plan, how many dependent employers are within the scope of that plan?
I believe that was, the only employer that was specified in that project was the AGL itself. So that is the Torrens facility.
Okay, just that facility. And how many employees does that cover? 100. Okay. How did you determine that? Was there any economic analysis done or just a desktop assessment?
So we did assess individually the supply chain of the Torrens facilities, and I believe there was about seven or eight different businesses in that particular supply chain, and the assessment of whether they would be included issues such as the local labour market, the ability of those individuals in the supply chain to find other work, training that was available, their existing qualifications, the number of them, and so forth. So that's for the people in the supply chain.
Are you helping find work for those 100 people? The status of that particular closure, if you like, is that it had a 2-year extension. So right, it is in 2028. 3-year extension. So the obligation on the employer now is to come to an agreement with the industrial organisations and their staff as to what training and opportunities that they will have during this period before the facility closes. So our efforts are to make sure that those people in Torrens currently working there will have the very best opportunity of finding new roles. In the Adelaide market, it's a labour market. There is, as you know, a growing defence industry, and there is opportunities for people with high skills. So, we think there is good options there.
It's not it's the first of these projects, but it's not in no way a typical project because it's
in the city.
It's a small gas facility in a capital city. So the authority is doing its work, and there is work there to do. And lessons will be learnt in terms of the approach, but it's not a typical facility.
Are there any other jobs plans?
So at the moment we have assessments going on for Araring in New South Wales, and we have also commenced our assessment in Yallourn in Victoria. We expect to be making a decision on Araring and the supply chain in this quarter, and in Yallourn this year as well. There is, Senator, as you'll be aware, changing dates for the coal-fired power stations. Some being pushed back, but there is quite a number scheduled prior to 2030.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
No? Okay, all right. So I think that concludes our session with the Net Zero Economy Authority. Thank you very much. You are released. And we will now welcome representatives from the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation. So if we can invite those representatives to join us in the room. And we will keep our break time of 9 o'clock. So we'll see how we go, where we're up to in the program. But hopefully they're coming.
They're normally the ones with questions.
There's a conga line of people with CSIRO because of the cuts and that.
They are, but they're not here.
Just
so
wondering where they are.
do
Is
you,
this CSIRO?
Yeah.
anyone else got any?
Well, I was expecting another one, so. Do you want to take our break and give them 15 minutes?
No.
Well, I'll just say, I was going to have a look. I'm sure I could ask them.
We could ask some questions. You'll go first. Do you want to ask some questions? Just 5 minutes. Okay. No. All right. Maybe one. All right. The committee welcomes representatives from the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to make a statement about the passing of Emma Johnston, not a formal opening statement. For us in the science community, and obviously for Emma's family and friends, it's been an incredibly sad time with her passing just before the new year. On behalf of Ming Long, our board chair, and all of our staff, I'd like just to say a few words about the difference Emma's made to Australia and to Australia's National Science Agency, CSIRO. I've known Emma for more than 20 years, and anybody working in Australian science, even in very different fields from hers, knew Emma. She was a wonderful advocate for Australian science, for the environment, for universities, and for national and international collaboration. She carried the torch for all of us. Emma brought amazing passion, clarity of thought and purpose, warmth and kindness, and her ability to encourage her peers and those making their way in the world, and those qualities have inspired us all. She inspired us to work harder, she inspired us to work smarter, she inspired us to work together, and she inspired us to make a difference in the world. She challenged us to be bold and to think strategically about CSIRO's role in the country. She was an exemplary board member and she's irreplaceable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hilton.
I'll ask some questions.
Senator Cameron.
Okay, me first? Okay, thank you, Chair. Look, I'll just go to the, I think the draft of GenCost was released in December. First of all, I suppose I'll ask Catchall, I believe you've totally changed the methodology. So what's happened and why?
Senator, I'll pass that to Dr. Mayfield.
Senator Peter Mayfield, Executive Director for Environment, Energy and Resources. So I think you were talking about the SEM and the system, LCOE.
Yep.
Yeah, so they were introduced as part of the consultation that takes place each cycle with GenCost. So stakeholder feedback was that they wanted some tools they could look at the whole system, as well as be able to do some of the work themselves as well, if you had a bit more advanced skills. So they've been developed to meet that requirement, and they're consistent with the previous methodologies, but they're an evolution of it.
Right. So, yeah, I'm just this system cost that you're doing. What do you call it? The levelised system cost of energy. Is that what you've got?
Is that the simple energy model?
Sorry.
It's simple energy model, I think, is one of them.
Is that the new one you've got?
Well, it's a tool where it's more accessible, right, to use the existing engine that we're using, but it's not for someone who doesn't have modelling expertise, but for a user group that has a bit more expertise and some licensing of various software. They can do scenarios. Okay, I might look at it. I had a quick look at it when it came out, but then Christmas and all, and I haven't got back to it. So I thought you were switching to a system cost of energy, an LSCOE. Is that right or not? So the SLCOE is trying to make sure you can incorporate all the systems costs in doing an LCOE, as opposed to using the basic one that we have used.
Yep. And then you added on a firmed, the old one, you had a levelised cost of energy, and you'd add on a firmed.
Yeah, the cost of various
But this one, you integrate the so-called firming into the calculation.
Yeah, so whether it's transmission or gas.
So you have moved to that.
That's what that tool does, and it's been made available for the stakeholders.
Can I ask, in that, with those, for those estimates of the levelised system cost of energy, are you including the costs of the upgrades to transmission that we're at the moment investing in Snowy Hydro, HumeLink, Central West Arana?
I'd have to take the specific detail on notice for Mr. Graham, but the intent is to have transmission costs in there. So I think, in principle, yes.
It says here, under existing capacity, the 2050 model and the MLAP 2050 include existing and committed transmission, hydro and pumped hydro as exogenously existing capacity in 2050. This means that existing or committed capacity of transmission hydro in 2025 is cost-free in the sense that it can be used in 2050 without new investment cost. So that you're not including those costs, say, if they're endogenous to the model.
So that's an ongoing discussion around what is sunk cost versus what is included. And we've made adjustments in various reports, given that the sunk cost moves along with time. But we take the costs going forward from the point in time that the work's being done.
In the number that you report for whatever acronym you use, but the levelised system cost, does it include the multi-billion dollars that we are currently spending on transmission?
So it will include things out to 2030 and then out to 2050. There'll be a list. But in terms of where it starts, I would have to take that on notice just to get you the
well, obviously it's crucial because
the detail is there. I didn't do the work, so I don't have that detail.
All right. Okay. Well, if you could take that on notice, because if Origin has been reported today saying that electricity prices are set to go up anyway, regardless of where wholesale power costs are, because we're starting to see the transmission cost investments flow through to electricity prices. So this is a crucial question to determine what people actually pay.
And the intent is to try and capture those, right?
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll take it on notice. I just note also in this report on page 95, you say after June 2022, AEMO no longer published new build coal prices. This reflects the bipartisan policies of net zero emissions by 2050. The Liberal National Party dropped support for net zero in November. This was published in December. Why did you write that it was bipartisan?
I would have to take that on notice.
So now that it's no longer bipartisan, are you going to publish new build coal prices?
I'd have to take it on notice to look at the specific issue you're raising.
Well, that was the reason it's no longer bipartisan. So, excuse has been taken away. All right, I might leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pocock.
Just looking at the $233 million in MyEFO to maintain research capability and undertake property consolidation planning. Prior to those funds being provided, we understood that there were 350 jobs to be cut. I'm interested how many of those jobs will no longer be cut as a result of the additional funding through MyEFO.
Senator, as part of our research portfolio review that we conducted last year, we identified up to between 300 to 350 potential impacted staff members. And those changes will go ahead irrespective of the funding that we receive through MyEFO as part of our commitment to ensure that the workforce that we have and the programs that we're working on deliver the greatest possible impact for the country by focusing in priority areas.
And is there not a way that, given you've got this extra money, some of those researchers could be, or staff could be, reskilled and continue employment for the CSIRO?
So the funds we receive through MyEFO are to enable us to begin to get on the pathway to sustainability. It's a problem that has really confronted the organisation going back decades into the 70s. The chief executive at the time discussed the challenges around ageing property and infrastructure. There issues that are long in making, and as good stewards of the agency, we're committed to ensuring that we get on top of our repair and maintenance backlog, that we use depreciation funding to ensure the safety of our facilities, that we tackle things like cyber security. They're really things that we're doing now for the long-term good of the agency and fundamentally to protect staff safety and ensure we continue to provide safe facilities. So to me, those things are non-negotiable.
So it sounds like the 233 million is essentially to work out how to fund a whole lot of things out of your existing budget, like big expenses like capital improvements out of a declining budget, as we've covered estimates before. When you take into account inflation, the cost of cyber, the cost of research, your budget is declining, and this money is essentially to try and help you deal with a declining budget. Is that?
No, Senator. As I indicated to you in previous estimates and in discussions that have been held publicly and privately, the process that Mr. Hilton, Professor Hilton, and the CSIRO undertook is in relation to the first research prioritisation exercise that has been undertaken for 15 years. There has been no reduction in funding to the CSIRO. There is it's around about $1 billion every year of Commonwealth expenditure provided to the CSIRO, and in addition this year to sustain the CSIRO and continue that work on future sustainability, which is, as Professor Hilton has indicated, a very substantial nation-building piece of work, an additional, I think, $233 million, if I've got my memory right, allocated in my EFO, a substantial amount more, I think, than was predicted around the place. It's a very substantial commitment from government to the CSIRO, along with an annual $1 billion allocation.
Professor Hilton, so under the sort of continued funding model, which, as the Minister says, is $1 billion a year, but is clearly not at CPI, have you done any projections as to the point in time at which you have to make more cuts? Because I guess the pattern of CSIRO has been you restructure and then at some point it kind of catches up with you again and then you have to restructure. Have you done some of that work?
As we've discussed with staff and communicated, for us to be sustainable over the next 10 years, which is the commitment the board and the senior management have made and have communicated to staff, we need each year to find approximately $80 to $135 million per annum over that period. And that allows us to ensure that depreciation kind of backlog does not continue to increase. We can get on top of repairs and maintenance and provide a safe, fit-for-purpose working environment for our staff.
Thank you. And do you have a sort of estimated annual science inflation rate? Like, what are your costs and costs of research going up a year?
That depends a little bit on different elements of that. Maybe I'll hand to Mr. Munyard.
Maybe
for that.
in aggregate over.
Tom Munyard, Chief Operating Officer. Don't necessarily have in aggregate, Senator, because our cost base does shift from year to year, but there's examples where, for example, our IT costs have increased by 35% over 5 years.
35%?
Yes, so we've seen that. Our site operating costs have increased 23% over the last 5 years as well, from 49.6 million to 61.2. So there are some challenges that we're facing across the organisation, and that's one of the reasons why we're very grateful for the MyEFO funding that's enabled us to start that process towards some long-term sustainability, because the 45 sites, for example, that we have across the organisation are very expensive to run, and therefore being able to start that long-term sustainability work is very important to us to try to reduce that overhead.
Minister, I really appreciate your government's commitment in MyEFO, but when you're hearing about 35% increases over 5 years, clearly the 1% increase per year on funding is not going to cut it. So is there a plan to actually get CSIRO to the point where it can both invest in old infrastructure, but also do the science that we need to be doing?
The board, and I realise I promoted Dr. Hilton earlier, and then
I appreciated that,
and then transmitted that to you, Senator Pocock. I apologise. Dr. Hilton and the board do have an enormous job of work to do, and the government will support them in that work. That difficult work, but very broad-based, deep work that has been undertaken, working with staff across the organisation, working with government's national science priorities to make sure that the work that the CSIRO does is in the right priority areas, is a difficult but necessary step there. I know that the board and the chair and Dr. Hilton and the senior staff are working through all of those issues, including with the department and with government more broadly. There is a mountain of work to do to make sure that the CSIRO is in the condition it needs to be, with the capabilities and the infrastructure that it needs to have for the long-term future.
Again, a one-off injection is a welcome decision, but do you accept that there's a need to have a sustained increase in the appropriation, at least in line with inflation?
It is a very substantial amount that the government allocates to the CSIRO. It's $1 billion.
I understand that you said that, but I'm saying, like, if it's not keeping up with inflation, that substantial investment every year is becoming less and less and less.
Well, I'm not sure that inflation is the right.
35% over 5 years.
Yeah. So paying careful, disciplined attention in the process that Dr. Hilton has been and will lead to making sure that facilities are exactly how they need to be. We'll work very carefully, and future decisions will be made in the normal budget context.
Can I just ask a few questions about rabbit biocontrol? And thank you very much, both for the work you're doing, seeing the amazing work you're doing at Black Mountain and your team there, who are truly world class. And thank you for the answers to questions on notice of the last estimates. You basically said it would take about $3 million in 10 years to have the next biocontrol virus good to go. I've been running around asking questions of DQ and DAF, and whilst there's a lot of finger pointing as to who's actually in charge of this, I've been told that there has been $1 million recently awarded, and you also referenced that in response to my quan. I'm interested, is that sufficient to be 1 million of the 3 million, or is this a separate thing?
I might pass that question to Dr. Taylor for the specifics, but I'm happy to talk perhaps afterwards to make some general comments about CSIRO's commitment to invasive species and biosecurity. But Dr. Taylor?
Dr. Jen Taylor, Executive Director of Future Industries. Thanks for the question, Senator. Yeah, so we're quite committed to rabbit biocontrol, and the work has been ongoing for some years. The specific funding that you're talking about, there has been some awarded that I understand will allow the work to continue until September 2026, and that continuity is quite important for us. So we're very grateful for that. In the meantime, we're having a range of conversations as you know, CSIRO is publicly funded to undertake these works and tackle national challenges like rabbit biocontrol. And so we have been able to continue that work. We've also had support from MLA over past years. So the work you're talking about over the next 3 years, I think is really quite important work to perhaps change the way in which we identify agents that can help us biocontrol rabbits. It helps design a platform that will put us in much greater stead as these, biocontrol agents lose their efficacy over time. So that $3 million will provide a step change for us, I think, and we've been talking very actively to DAF and DQ with their support about how we use that. So that will get us in 3 years to a go, no-go point where we understand whether that new technology will work or not. And if so, then, that will be quite a good outcome because it's a platform technology that we can apply again.
And I had a bit of a go at DAF the other night. Asking why are we in this situation? We know rabbits are a huge problem. We've had 2 very effective viruses, and now we're saying we're 10 years away from the next one when we've got rabbits building up and there's sort of huge resistance. What's gone wrong? Why haven't we had, or have we had research and we just haven't been able to find them? Find the next virus. Why are we in this situation with no virus?
Well, that's correct. There has been work ongoing. There was a study funded between CSIRO and MLA to find the next biocontrol agent.
Senator, I'm going to have to rotate the call.
Yeah, so that concluded recently. We wait for these viruses to naturally emerge, and there just has not been the natural emergence of a virus in this. So that's what this new platform will do. It will really accelerate that natural emergence and give us a platform that can, uncover, rather than wait opportunistically for a virus to appear somewhere around the world, we actually start to generate them ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for appearing again tonight, and good evening. In the October estimates, you took on notice this question. How many times has the CSIRO used animals for testing over the last 5 years, and how frequently was the subject destroyed afterward? End of quote. This is question on notice SI 173. Your response was detailed and came in good time, so thank you very much. It was very prompt. Your answer was as follows, and I'll quote. In the 2024 calendar year, there were 248 animal experiments involving 1,077,455 animals, and 752,757 were humanely killed afterward. Of these, 654,464 were fish, so this leaves 98,293 animals that were not fish, which were killed in animal experimentation by CSIRO in a single year. End of quote. Do you have data on what those animals were and what the experimentation was that justified this level of kill?
I'll pass that question to Dr. Taylor.
Thank you for the question, Senator. We do use animals in our research. Obviously, we adhere to very strict regulations and guidelines, and we're a signatory to the transparency of use of animals in research. So,
excuse me, is that international or national?
National. Okay. And so the types of work that research, it ranges from observational studies, such as video capture of cattle and those sorts of things, all the way through to areas where, as you say, animals are humanely killed. And we use animals in our biocontainment facility, Australian Centre of Disease Preparedness. And we use that there. They're obviously very important experiments that we undertake where we do that for national benefit protection of our borders from biosecurity threats, support of our export markets, and also, preparedness for any threats to human health.
Thank you. Did this experimentation occur at the Australian Centre for Disease Preparedness, formerly the Australian Animal Health Laboratory?
Senator, some of it does, but certainly not all of it. That facility is a highly specialised facility for distinct purposes, and yes, some of that work does. Where it does require that level of biocontainment, then yes, it does.
So it seems that CSIRO are running a substantial animal experimentation operation at the Australian Animal Health Laboratory, or what was the Australian Animal Health Laboratory. Does it comply with the Australian Code for the Care and Use of Animals for Scientific Purposes, which CSIRO co-wrote?
Yes, it does, and that facility complies with that. It also complies with a dedicated animal ethics committee that is made up of independent members, independent of CSIRO, that undergoes external review on a very regular basis.
Thank you. Is there any independent audit of the procedures?
There is regularly through the ethics committee that undertakes that. Yes, and those reviews are available and are part of our obligations with the experimental use of animals.
Is that independent or just within CSIRO?
It's independent. It's conducted by an independent body to CSIRO.
Okay, thank you. The international trend in animal testing is to replace and reduce animal use. On notice, can you provide the figure for the number of animal experiments and the number of animals, which are not fish, that have been euthanised after research over the last 5 years?
I'm happy to take that on notice, Senator.
Thank you. Does the facility have chimneys, and are those still in use, and if so, for what purpose? We're looking at pictures of the facility.
Can you define what you mean by chimneys? It does have towers, I guess, you know, and it's certainly so. Maybe what you're asking is how is the waste from the facility used? Is that dealt with? Is that what you're asking, Senator?
I'd like to know if you burn things on site and if the exhaust gases and products go out the chimney.
Senator, so the Australian Centre for Disease Preparedness is quite a unique facility in that all of its material that is used is treated thoroughly before it leaves the site. So what happens actually is an autoclave process where all material is heated to an internationally recognised temperature that kills everything in that before it is released. So there is no fumes that leave the facility, and everything that leaves the facility, that facility has been treated with multiple redundancies in place.
So I appreciate what you said in your answer. I'm not after the environmental compliance or the production of carbon dioxide. I'm after knowledge.
No, this is security compliance.
Yes,
in fact, and
right.
it's part of what makes the facility unique.
Does it include the disposal of euthanised animals?
Yes.
I've tabled an aerial shot of the photo of the Geelong facility. Can you explain what those two large green areas are?
Yes, Senator, they're bodies of water.
That's what we guessed. What is the purpose of these ponds?
There is no purpose, Senator.
Why have they got pipes, what look to be pipes, going to the creeks on drainage channels on each side, and both of them ending out in Stingaree Bay?
Senator, look, I'm not a hydrological engineer, so I'm happy to take that on notice, but they are not for purposes of handling waste from the facility.
They're entirely separate to the containment facility. There's no connection between the effluent and the creeks. So we'll take on notice and perhaps provide you a report about the drainage from those bodies of water, but they would be treated like runoff from lots of other areas around the facility.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. I'm concerned about the colour, the bluey-green colour. It's typical of cyanobacteria. I'd like to know what is in the ponds, what they're used for, and how they're treated when they discharge, because they would discharge.
Happy to take that on notice.
Thank you. I can't see a water processing plant anywhere. So I'd like to know why the ponds have pipes, what appear to be pipes connecting them to the drainage lines, and then to the bay.
All water, the way the facility is constructed, all water processing happens within the facility and within full biosecurity containment.
Where's the process? What sort of, could you answer with on notice, what sort of processing?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
And where's the plant? And can you assure me that no cyanobacteria or other bacteria or toxins have been released into Stingaree Bay?
We'll take that question on notice.
Of course. Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I think that concludes our...
Just quickly, if I can, Chair. I was just
take us to 9 o'clock.
Great. Okay. I just wanted to make just to check if, given I read out that part of the GenCost report, which claimed that there's bipartisan support for net zero, I wonder if you could have a look at that, because I realise it's printed and maybe it was gone to the printers before the LNP had made its decision, but it is clearly a factually incorrect statement now, and there could easily be an errata put out in response, if you could consider that.
I think it was the draft report that's gone out for consultation. Is that right?
Draft.
So we'd be happy.
But it's still up. I mean,
no, we'd be happy to
we'll look
look
at that.
that.
I'm not familiar with the specific reference.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
We'll
Great.
make sure that message gets out there.
I'd love it to.
Yeah.
Well, you a strike of a pen, Minister. Tell them to do it.
Well, they operate independently. Don't you worry, Senator. Far and wide. Far and wide.
So, all right, well, that concludes our questions for the CSIRO. Thank you very much for coming, and apologies for the delay. So we will suspend for a break now and resume at 9:15 with Department of Industry, Science and Resources Program 1.3. Thank you. We're good to...
Did you want to wait for the minister? Or you don't
Oh, the minister. Do I need to wait for the minister?
No, but it might be. We can...
of Industry, Science and Resources for Program 1.3, Supporting a Strong Resources Sector. And the topics and entities for this session are minerals and resources, oil and gas. And I am going to go to Senator McDonald.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening. Finally, we're on to the interesting part of the program. Has the department modelled or been provided modelling that totals the economic cost to Australia of phasing out commodities like gas, coal and crude petroleum?
No.
One of President Bowen's first actions as the COP31's negotiations president was to sign Australia up to the Belém Declaration on the just transition away from fossil fuels. Was the Resources Minister or her office consulted prior to Australia signing up?
I'll throw to my colleague. I believe this was asked last estimates, and and we were consulted, as we usually are, ahead of government declarations, but...
Thanks, Robert Jeremenko, Deputy Secretary, Resources and Strategy. As the Secretary said, yes, at the last estimate we were asked this, and I confirmed that we were consulted before that was signed. We as the department.
What was the nature of that consultation?
I wasn't personally involved in it, Senator, so to get you an exact answer, I'd have to take that on notice.
I envisage it was. I mean, usually when the government's going on an international, engaging internationally, there's a process for getting positions across government, and usually that's done through different mechanisms. Sometimes it's through interdepartmental committees, other times it's through correspondence, other times it's through ministers having discussions. So happy to. I imagine we were consulted as the process went forward on all the kind of COP positions, but we're happy to take it on notice.
So you were consulted prior to the Minister going to COP31?
Sometimes it happens prior if it's a
No, not sometimes, specifically
we'll ask them
on
the question
this.
on notice, but sometimes it's before, sometimes it's during, depending on how worked up the proposal is. Sometimes proposals change within international events and they need to be checked. I've certainly been involved in processes where you get things iteratively while the positions are landing. So we can check in the circumstances for this one.
Okay, so on notice then, I would like to know if you were consulted prior to President Bowen going to COP31 and what was the nature of the consultation? Thank you. The Smart Energy Council described the declaration as, and I quote, the strongest statement Australia has ever made on phasing out fossil fuels. Minister, is phasing out our key exports now government policy?
Well, the government's policy here is the one that's been articulated by us for quite some time. It was in terms of our approach to exports and international climate negotiations and the role of the international climate framework not too dissimilar to yours, actually, in terms of the role of global climate negotiations.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. It was about phasing out key exports. Because that certainly wasn't our policy.
It was exactly the same.
Really?
Exactly the same.
Our policy was to phase out iron ore, coal, gas.
There's been enough interrupting over the course of today. I've done none of it. Senator Colbeck's been here all day. He'll vouch for me.
Is that true? Is that true? Look, you nearly killed him.
I don't want to cause Senator Colbeck to choke on his afternoon tea. Our approach is to secure the best position that we can for Australia in industrial terms, in economic terms, and in environmental terms, and in agricultural terms. And I want the last container ship, a bulk carrier of coal that arrives in a Korean or a Japanese or a Chinese port to be an Australian one. But I also want to make sure that there is a credible approach for emissions reduction around the world that involves substantial cooperation with our partners, in particular our industrial and our resource and energy partners, to deliver that outcome. There's nothing new in the approach. I've had a look at the declaration that you are also worried about, and there's nothing substantially different. I'm fascinated with what I'm interested in what the Smart Energy Council might have to say about it, but it reflects situation normal, and the world's approach to energy use is changing.
I'm trying to take the Canadian approach and not interrupt.
Well,
Thank you, Minister.
They are very polite and accommodating.
They are very polite people,
yes,
absolutely.
They
I agree.
Just like we've been.
Indeed.
There's no new jokes here, I can tell you. I've heard them.
Minister, can I ask then, We're not sure if the Resources Minister was consulted. We know that the department was consulted. Was Cabinet consulted on the Bellam agreement?
Well, it would have been dealt with in the normal way, as the Secretary has outlined. Of course, I don't want to bore you with this, but cabinet processes are...
no, I don't seek to understand cabinet processes.
Yeah.
I only seek to understand if there was good consultation and...
I think we've taken it on notice, Senator, the broad question.
Well, no, you didn't take it on notice as to whether or not it had gone to cabinet. And I wanted to clarify that the Resources Minister wasn't consulted, it was just the department that was consulted. Is that right?
As I indicated, we said we'll take that on notice. I know that you have to work out how it is that you explain the coalition's position returning to the Iranian and the Russian position, which is going to be difficult to sustain across the Australian community and in the world. But if that's the position that you want to adopt, feel free.
I'm sorry, I've got no idea what you're talking about.
Your position on climate and energy is the same as the Russians and the Iranians. That's what I'm saying.
Really?
Yes.
Goodness.
Yes.
Do you think the... Oh, don't worry. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. No, thank you. How will the signing of this declaration impact existing coal and gas projects currently awaiting approval?
In no way.
In no way?
I wouldn't think so.
You don't think that it will worry investors?
The investment community make decisions about these projects on the normal basis that they normally would. They don't, have regard to Senator Canavan or anybody else's social media. They make sensible decisions in a sensible way.
What about excluding gas from EPBC fast-track approvals? Do you think that provided them with greater confidence for investing in Australia?
I'll allow the officials to answer that question.
That's all right. That's an opinion question, so I'm not going to ask the officials that. Does the department expect any delays to approval times with the signing of this declaration?
Given it's, as I understand it, a reaffirmation of existing commitments made at COP28 in 2023 and aligns with the domestic commitments to achieve net zero by 2050, including set out in the Future Gas Strategy and the Resources Sector Plan, I don't imagine so.
Okay. Does the department know how many coal and gas projects will not go ahead because of the signing of the declaration?
Just my previous answer, I'm not expecting it to have a significant or any noticeable impact.
Okay. Have any international stakeholders, governments or companies made any representations to the department about the signing of this declaration?
Certainly hasn't come up with me. I'm happy to check with other officials. We do meet with quite a lot on a regular basis.
Okay. If you would, that would be terrific, because I'm curious if the Americans in your consultations on critical minerals had views on Australia signing out of gas exports. I'm sure that's not something that they would embrace.
It's not something that's come up in discussions that I've been party to.
Minister, has the government received any representations from foreign governments or companies about the signing of the declaration?
Not to my knowledge, but if we can assist with anything different to that, I'm sure we will.
All righty, thank you.
Can I... 9 minutes. I'll rotate the call and come
back. Why
back.
don't you do that now?
Now is a good time? Yep. Okay.
I've got hips.
Senator Hodgins-May.
Thank you, Chair. And maybe just to follow up, do you think the Bellam Declaration will have any meaningful impact on our exports and emissions?
So the Australian commitments are contained in the government policies that are legislated, and the full range of policies such as commitments to net zero, the Resources Sector Plan, the Future Gas Strategy. They're all the instruments of government policy and the ones that will guide regulatory activity in Australia. The government is committed to net zero by 2050, and it was before the declaration, and it is after the declaration.
But you don't think that the declaration has any real impact, like anything additional to the 2023
I mean, it's a reaffirmation of the commitments made in 2023. Climate policy is for the Department of Climate Change and Energy, but of course, continued international commitments to reducing emissions is to be welcomed in terms of achieving net zero by 2050.
Thank you. I've got some question about DISE's role in promoting the Australian resources sector overseas. And to be specific, I'm keen to know what the nature of DISE's engagement on the ground is in Timor-Leste.
So in Timor, I'm happy to, at a high level, we don't have people on the ground in Timor-Leste on a permanent basis, but we do have regulatory activities associated with the international agreements covering aspects of the Sunrise project. But I'll pass to my colleagues to detail it. So there's some there is a program where we're working with officials in Timor-Leste to increase their capacity and capability to do effective regulation of their industry. So that's a sort of capacity building exercise. Then there's a separate stream which is to do with the actual negotiations around joint regulatory activity. So they're the two main streams, but I'll pass to my colleagues who've got further details.
Senator Sam Chard, I'm the Head of Division for Oil and Gas Division in the Department of Industry. So we have a team within my division that's responsible for some elements of the negotiations with Timor-Leste under the treaty that supports the Greater Sunrise Venture. And under that treaty and those negotiations, there are a range of agreements that we are working through with Timor-Leste, including a petroleum mining code. And that will inform the high-level regulatory environment for the Greater Sunrise Special Regime area. We're also responsible for negotiating the production sharing contract. That'll be the document that sets out the commercial aspects of how the fields will be developed. It's signed by each of the Sunrise Joint Venture and designated authority on behalf of both states. There's also a fiscal regime that we're involved in negotiating, and we do that with our colleagues in Treasury. And that's an in-principle agreement around how taxation will be treated in relation to the joint Sunrise Venture. So occasionally there are members of my team who have technical expertise who go over to Timor-Leste and participate in those negotiations. Sometimes the representatives from Timor-Leste come to Australia.
And did DISA have a role in the Timor-Leste Australian Economic and Business Conference 2025 from the 7th to the 8th of August?
Senator, yes, we did have some involvement in that.
And what was the role that we played?
To give you the specifics, I'll just ask one of my colleagues to join me.
William Tan, General Manager, Offshore Decommissioning Directorate within the Oil and Gas Division. Senator, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, what was DISA's role at the Australia Economic and Business Conference last year in August?
So I believe, so that was funded a little bit before I started in the role, but I believe the Australian government funded participation from Timor-Leste officials to be at that conference.
And perhaps if I could get on notice any other role that we played.
I just want to check the details. What conference are you referring to?
The Timor-Leste Australia Economic and Business Conference 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, Senator, we'll take it on notice. My understanding is that we participated in an information booth at the conference, and that we were also involved in facilitating a couple of sessions at the conference, as well as supporting some of the Timor-Leste participation. But we'll take on notice to give you more specific detail on that.
That'd be great, thank you. And can the department rule out the promotion of fossil fuel projects or their companies to the Timorese people?
Sorry, can you just...
Can the department rule out promotion of fossil fuel projects or their companies to the Timorese people?
Well, certainly, Senator, it's not the department's role to promote projects as such. We have a role in considering the particular development proposal for the Sunrise joint venture. So the Sunrise joint venture participants are in the process of developing a concept for how that project will be developed. And the department plays a role in assessing the technical and commercial viability of that. Australia's been committed to supporting any development proposal that is both technically viable and commercially viable, but beyond that, we have no role in promoting projects in any particular way.
And do you know if there was any...
Just to be clear, I mean, the Prime Minister was in Timor-Leste
recently,
in January, signed a joint declaration with the Prime Minister of Timor-Leste that acknowledged their commitment to onshore processing of the gas from Greater Sunrise. You know, this is a very significant economic resilience opportunity for that country, and for all of the reasons that you can imagine. You know, the Australian government is intensifying our cooperation with the government of Timor-Leste for economic development reasons, for all of the regional stability reasons that you can that I probably don't need to go through.
Yeah, look, I've had questioning of DFAT today in relation to that as well, so I am honing into some more detailed questions here. And is, out of interest, is the department of the view that the gas from Greater Sunrise should be processed in Australia?
So the government doesn't, the department doesn't have a specific view. Our role, as outlined by Ms. Chard, is to do technical analysis and the regulatory work. The Australian government's position is it supports outcomes that are commercially viable and technically feasible. And so it would be inappropriate for us to go further than that.
And I suppose, do you think that any support, be it technical or regulatory, of a fossil fuel project like Greater Sunrise in Timor might contradict our signing of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership? And perhaps that's one for the Minister.
Can you ask again, sorry?
Yeah, do you believe, based on what you just talked about, that support of a fossil fuel project like Greater Sunrise in Timor might contradict our signing of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership?
No.
No? Do you know what the partnership is?
Well, I'm sure that the position that we've adopted in terms of that partnership and our approach to supporting aspirations of Timor-Leste and our broader obligations, and you know, all of this has been worked through, I imagine, carefully. The reason I'm cautious about going into detail is these are, as the officials have indicated, their role is to do that technical work. We've had an opportunity in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade estimates to canvass those issues. Not sure how that's gone, but I'm sure they would do a better job there than I at explaining the Australian government's position in relation to these regional relationships and strategic questions.
Yeah, look, just to reiterate that partnership reinforces Australia's commitment to build a global net zero economy while working to align global finance commitments with the goals of the Paris Agreement. So it's hard to see how that works, how it doesn't contradict the Greater Sunrise project. And we had a similar answer from DFAT, frankly. Given Osaka Gas's ownership stake in Greater Sunrise, has DISA held any discussions with the Japanese government or its public finance institutions regarding public financing of the project in Timor-Leste?
Senator, we do engage with Osaka gas regarding the project, but not in relation to public financing of the project. So at least certainly I haven't personally.
Can you share any more information about what it is in regards to then, if it's not in relation to financing?
So we would engage with Osaka Gas about and other entities involved in the project about the progression, the development of the studies that are being undertaken to support a development concept, how they're progressing, views on the technical viability and the commercial viability of proposals that might be being put forward. Okay. But certainly public financing hasn't come up in any of the discussions that I've been involved in.
And just on that, the Woods 2024 feasibility study, do you have a copy of that?
The department has seen a copy of it, yes.
Is that something that can be made public, given the significant public interest involved?
We'll take that on notice, Senator, but the study contains quite extensive commercial in confidence information that would have implications for decisions made about the commercial structure of the venture. So we'll take that on notice, but it's not something that's being considered to be published because of the commercial in confidence information.
Potentially some reductions. Can I just finish this block with one last question, please, Chair? Thank you.
And just to be clear, it's not our document.
Yes, no, I
so
realise.
We need to consult with the owners of the document for any of their views about it.
I won't hold my breath, but it's worth asking nonetheless. Finally, on this topic, if Santos's proposal to store CO2 from Barossa in the depleted Bayu Undan reservoir in Timor-Leste goes ahead, who will be responsible for managing the risk and monitoring any leakage of that? Do you know?
Senator, I think we're nowhere near at a point to be able to answer a question like that when we've not actually settled on any kind of development concept for the project or assessed the technical aspects of a proposal that might involve that kind of outcome.
Yeah, okay. Surely, I suppose ownership of risk would be a key initial part of the thinking, but I shall return maybe at next estimates and ask again. I
mean, certainly, absolutely. The considerations around the technical viability of the project, the capacity to be able to manage different aspects of the project are all the kind of things that we consider. But your question presumes an outcome that's not being considered at this time because the proposal hasn't been developed to such an extent that it would allow us to consider that kind of outcome.
Thank you, and I know that I'm at time, so I will conclude there. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Senator McDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Can I speak with Ms Penny, please? The Chief Economist.
So you can maybe ask the question, but she might not be the appropriate person to answer. But I'm not sure whether... Yeah, Ms Penny is not here.
Oh, she normally comes to this.
We have people who can answer questions from that division, but...
Has the department or the Chief Economist undertaken any modelling or analysis of the impact of the anti-coal and gas amendments and the EPBC reforms?
No.
So you know the workload of the Chief Economist, you can be clear on that?
Yes.
How will new projects be impacted?
So you might want to clarify your question a little bit for me. So are you asking how will the new EPBC Act impact on coal and gas projects in Australia?
The changes from the EPBC Act that went through last December, how will that impact new coal and gas projects?
Okay, so partly there's sort of elements of it clarifying various components. I'm not an expert on all the details of the EPBC Act because that's the Department of Environment, but there was an element in that legislation that linked to the possibility of regulatory actions for NOPSEMA, and we think that that will be a positive for the oil and gas industry.
Why do you think that?
Because it allows for the streamlining of regulations through time, and it makes it easier for things to be adapted and changed in a way that provides more regulatory certainty. The final arrangements have not worked through yet. We need to do some more work with the EPBC now that the legislation's been passed to kind of join it up. But I'll pass to my colleague if he's got anything further.
Thank you. That's correct. As the Secretary said, the power, the change in the EPBC Act was to give a new power to the Minister for the Environment to declare an offshore environment application that was approved already by NOPSEMA, National Offshore Petroleum Safety and Environmental Management Authority, as valid, so as not to require a separate approval. So that's the streamlining that the Secretary referred to. So it is a huge step forward, and what that will allow as a next step, which the government is working towards, is to clarify consultation requirements, which I know Senator Eve asked about previously. And the first step required was to have that amendment made in the main Act, such that there wasn't going to be an undoing, if you like, of the existing NOPSEMA environmental approval. So that is the next step that we are working through and providing advice to government on. So that is an overwhelming positive for oil and gas projects.
All right. How about projects currently on the Resources and Energy Major Projects list of 2025? Will it affect any of those?
So the intent of the Act is to provide a more streamlined assessment process and to provide more certainty to industry. So to the extent that those objectives are fulfilled, it will help development procedures right across the resources industry, with this additional link for the oil and gas to the regulatory regime for NOPSEMA.
And what about projects on the 2024 list?
Should work in the same way. There are obviously all proponents will be treated under the new legislation, whether they started in 23 or 25.
And okay. So will this have the same effect as the proposed legislative changes that were stalled? I'm just trying to remember if it was 24 or 25.
So the government is committed to providing clarity on the consultation elements, which I think is what you're referring to.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. So those changes that were legislated, went through the House, but then didn't get into the Senate, how does this differentiate from those changes?
We need to make sure that with the change in the Environment Act and with this additional connection streamlining, we need to relook at the technical aspects of that process to be able to deliver the outcome that the government has asked us to do. That work's being done now. And so the technicality of achieving the outcome could well change. But the intent for the government is to.
Sorry, I don't really understand what you're saying.
Because of the change, it's a very complicated part of the legislation in order to make sure that streamlining under the previous Environmental Protection Act and the NOPSEMA offshore regulation, it was a very complicated legislative mechanism to be able to ensure that streamlining was maintained if you made any changes to the Offshore Act.
Yes.
And that was the technical difficulty of the previous changes. With the changes to the legislation, including the improved link to the Offshore Act, we are now looking at how to achieve the intended clarification and consultation, because it must be consistent with the changes that have happened under the Environmental Act.
Okay.
So that's the work we're doing now, with the same intended outcome, which is to provide additional clarity to industry on the consultation requirements across all of their regulatory approvals.
So this has superseded the amendments of the
well,
OPG
we're checking
SSA.
we're checking the technical detail.
Okay. When will you know if it's achieved what should have been achieved in those amendments 18 months ago?
Well, what the Secretary has outlined is absolutely the case. I'm just trying to rephrase what I said a few moments ago, Senator. Maybe I wasn't as clear as I could have been. The change to the EPBC Act was the first step that was required in terms of achieving the government's policy aim, as publicly committed some time ago now, to provide clarification around consultation requirements for environmental approvals of oil and gas projects. Now that legislation has passed, and referencing back to, as you referring to, it was a schedule in a bill that was ultimately amended before passing Parliament. I've said this before at this committee, that we had been working on ways that we could achieve the same outcome and advising government along those lines, given that schedule didn't pass. So we're part way there.
That schedule was removed in a deal with the Greens in order to pass the vehicle emissions legislation. That was the one 18 months ago.
Well, perhaps
I wonder if the Greens party knew that this was a change that went through as part of this arrangement. Anyway, we could reflect on that later. Does the chief economist or acting head of analytics, who's not here, who is always here, does that person forecast an expansion or decrease in the resources and energy quarterly export volumes for future coal and gas exports?
So my colleague here who oversees the production of that document.
You're at 9 minutes, Senator McDonald.
Perhaps somebody will let me take some more time rather than come back to me so I can finish this section.
How much longer do you have?
Probably 5 minutes.
Okay.
Senator, apologies. My name is Crystal Osolinsky. I'm the General Manager of the Resources, Energy and Industry Insights area within the Chief Economist's Division, and I'm here representing for her and myself. Can I just ask your question again, please?
My question was whether or not you forecast an expansion or decrease in the resources and energy quarterly export volumes for future coal and gas projects.
At this point, our forecasts are for largely stable growth in those entities over the next 2 years.
And after that?
We currently our most recent forecast is only out for 2 years. Our forecasts for 5 years are currently being redone and will be published as part of the March 2026 Resources and Energy Quarterly.
Did you work with the Treasury Department on their transition? I'm just trying to remember what it was called. The net zero transition projections that showed fossil fuel exports reducing pretty dramatically.
We certainly participated in consultation with Treasury during the net zero process from start to finish, which was quite a long policy process. Those net zero projections used by Treasury reflect a net zero scenario, largely based on IEA global projections of demand for those commodities.
So given that we've had record coal demand and usage each year reaching a new record, do you still think that that's an accurate projection?
I can't comment on whether the projection is accurate in the sense of whether it will turn out to be real, because the projection is assuming that we are targeting net zero in 2050. It assumes that there will be further policy action that occurs between now and 2050 to bring about that end. That's the nature of kind of the net zero projections. The forecasts that we do within the Resources and Energy Quarterly are done much more on a commercial basis and much more short-term forecast. And there is a gap in methodology across those two.
I guess that makes sense to me, because I couldn't quite align roughly 30% of Australia's export earnings coming from coal and gas and iron ore, and yet the net zero transformational modelling that seemed to say that we would be out of exports and out of money pretty rapidly. So, okay, so you have different methodology, different modelling, different outcomes.
For different purposes.
Well, for reality is where we're going, isn't it? Well, what's the different purposes for resources then?
No, not for resources in the sense that the activities are undertaken for different purposes. The work that the department does to look at the outlook for resources over the near term is to provide information to the market, to proponents in the system, and it also feeds into considerations in other parts of the department. The exercise that the Treasury undertook for the net zero exercise was a particular modelling exercise which they have articulated in public, which was around supporting government decision making on net zero decisions. And they are kind of different activities, different horizons, different activities.
Activities at cross purposes, I would have thought. Different. I mean, the Resources Department is trying to, I believe, facilitate additional and successful mining activity for Australians and Australian investors. And the Tax Department one, well, I'm not quite sure where it was used because it wasn't reflected in Revenue Group or just seemed to be the standalone document.
So, as a Department of State, we support the government in their policy objectives, which is to reduce emissions in Australia over time. And so, the government policies, and we supported the government to develop this, was the net zero reduction plan for the resources sector. And so, we certainly work towards policy aims of the government. The purpose of the Resources and Energy Quarterly Outlook is to do near-term forecasting of export volumes and prices. They're different elements. One is a near-term forecast, and the other one is policy development and scenarios in order to inform government decision-making. They obviously can link, but they're very different kind of purposes.
What sort of policy changes would your department be working on to assist the government's goal of reducing fossil fuel exports?
So they're outlined in the resources, the Net Zero Resources Plan and the Future Gas Strategy. And so there's elements in there to do with carbon capture and storage, to do with reduced emissions from fugitive gases, but I'll hand to my colleague to go through the other items.
Yeah, reducing venting and flaring of gas projects. There is a considerable amount that was outlined in that resources sector plan, which I can pull up some more further detail on if you're interested, Senator. But
well, I am interested. I think that the highlight of the future gas strategy was the overall concept of reducing supply down to a projected reduced demand, which I hadn't seen that reduced demand reflected in any of the international projections. It just seems that Australia is projecting reduced demand quite rapidly.
But certainly the future gas strategy also made very clear that gas will be required to 2050 and beyond, with that net zero commitment still in place. So, yes, well...
Not in the sort of quantities, though, that the rest of the world is projecting. I think they're projecting...
So as I understand it, the basis of the projections that was used by the Treasury modelling was consistent with the International Energy Agency scenarios. So that it was in that context.
Doubled gas demand by 2030 and increasing demand after that.
So that, I mean, you know, it is for the Treasury to explain in detail what they've done, but I do understand they were based on the International Energy Agency scenarios.
They are indeed, and I can comment
please.
on the trajectories in those scenarios if you'd like, Senator.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just missed what you first said.
Oh, sorry, I can say that the Treasury did indeed use the IEA's trajectories for demand for various commodities and for the outlook, and I can comment on those trajectories if you are interested.
Well, I am interested, but I'm going to run out of time if I asked you to do that now. Perhaps on notice you could do that.
Well, I might just, and I might come back to this later, just one follow-up. Did Treasury use the IEA forecasts released in the World Energy Outlook, I think 13th of November, our time, last year.
It was earlier than that.
So it hasn't been updated?
No.
There were massive revisions to coal and gas and oil demand in that November release. You're aware of that?
It sounds like there is interest in these trajectories, so perhaps I should put this information...
Well, I might just defer to the Chair, but we can come back to, because I'll probably have a lot of questions. But just one simple question. There was a significant increase, wasn't there, in that November release for coal, oil and gas demand projections? That's a fair summary, isn't it?
I think it would be easier to
Well,
indicate
I'll let the call go,
because
we'll drill down comparing Treasury and what the IEA actually thinks now. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Thank you very much. Could you just give me some details about the Indigenous workforce in the mining sector? I've got the right people here to answer those questions. Let's try and see what happens. So what I'd like to understand is what proportion of the mining workforce are Indigenous?
Someone is coming to the table, so I was going to say, unless a colleague has that information, so I'll see if Ms Illman has something to assist.
Thanks, Mr Jaravenko.
Good evening, Senator. Mari Ullman, Head of Division Minerals and Resources. Your question was in relation to proportion of workforce in First Nations in the mining sector?
Yes.
I have a number that says nationally mining employs First Nations Australians at a rate of 4.6% compared to an economy-wide average of 2.6%.
Okay. Do you have comparisons with any other sectors or just that general comparison?
I just have that general comparison.
So could you just take on notice any further detail about the comparative numbers between the mining sector in particular and other areas in which indigeneity has been recorded and noted as employment number?
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair. Thank you. Senator Hodgins-Main.
I've got some questions on the gas market review and taking up the Minister on his offer to discuss that in this part of the program. My questions relate to the rumoured bulk buy of gas to support industrial facilities as a possible outcome or solution, either as part of the gas market review or in parallel to the gas reserve being considered. Can the department please explain how maybe hypothetical for now bulk buy would operate and confirm whether this would involve government purchasing gas and on selling it to companies at below market rates?
There's quite a few hypotheticals in that. In general, in other circumstances where the government has bulk purchased activities, there is, for example, the pharmaceutical benefit scheme and other elements where you use scale and aggregated demand to be able to negotiate in a market that may not be a balanced market in terms of competitive dynamics. So in theory, there's a possibility that aggregating up demand might be able to result in a better commercial outcome, and that could be then shared with the individual customers that have been aggregated. So that's the theory in terms of if there's an imbalance between supply and demand or an imbalance between the number of suppliers and the number of demanders. There would be a whole set of policy considerations you'd need to do in that framework along the lines of how would you aggregate, how would you distribute, how would you do that sort of work. But that's the basic theory, is that if there's an imbalance between many different purchasers versus a smaller number of sellers, then you can reshape the market through aggregation.
So have you provided any formal advice on that to government yet, or?
I don't believe so. We certainly, it comes up in terms of stakeholders. Some stakeholders have suggested it, and we would provide information in terms of what's in the market, what people are asking for and what they're discussing. So in that sense, we probably have provided some form of advice to ministers.
So when you say stakeholders, it's sort of in-government ministers?
No, there are proponents in the market, industrial users, who feel like they don't have enough market information. There's definitely, through the whole consultation for the gas market review, was around asymmetric information between purchasers and sellers of gas, the ability to negotiate appropriate contracts that match the needs of industrial facilities. There has been ongoing public and private discussions around the prices that people are able to negotiate, and so that in those discussions it has come up about what are the different policy options available to the government. I mean, the government, in response to the gas market review, announced the further investigation of a reservation scheme for gas. And we are certainly working on that policy with that's the priority for the work we're doing in response to the gas market review, along with other changes to the gas market to improve long-term contracting and transparency of prices.
Yeah, okay, and do you think that bulk buy could be characterised as a subsidy?
So it depends on how it's characterised. Often, rebalancing of the market conditions is in itself not necessarily a subsidy. It could be characterised as a correction of a market failure, depending on the underlying dynamics of the market. A subsidy really is a sort of theoretical proposition in the sense of what would be the price achieved in an efficient and effective market, and is that different from what would happen if there's a government intervention. It is the case that government can intervene in markets to result in an efficient and effective outcome, and that's usually not characterised as a subsidy.
Thank you. Out of curiosity, why was reducing our carbon emissions, and maybe this is for the Minister, or phasing out gas not a term of reference in the gas market review?
Sorry, I didn't catch the first half.
Why wasn't reducing our carbon emissions or phasing out gas part of the terms of reference of the gas market review?
The objectives of the review were as they were set out, that is making sure that we have sufficient Australian gas for Australian users, and that our gas reserves are used to deliver more investment in Australian industry. There are, in some sectors, very significant emissions reduction opportunities, for example, from moving from coal to gas. And the government's broader approach on the industrial side, we're in resources, but just allow me to move back across to my sort of favourite subject. For example, the Net Zero Fund, the $5 billion concessional, at the bond rate -1 as the target rate, is designed to support Australian businesses, industrial firms, particularly where, for example, where gas is used as a heat source, to be able to access new capital that makes them more efficient and able to use electricity or thermal batteries or whatever the technology is that suits their production processes. There will always be, subject to technological developments, some sections of Australian industry where gas is either very hard to eliminate or, as we've discussed before, part of the chemical process of producing a product as a feedstock.
Yeah, look, I do understand
so
the
all those
complexity.
things,
I understand the complexities of the hard-to-abate industries,
Senator,
I suppose.
I've just looked at the gas market terms of reference, and it does the reference. The review was asked to examine the effectiveness and coherence of specific mechanisms identified, including the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, the Heads of Agreement, and the Domestic Code of Conduct, etc., in the context of ensuring it achieves the government's objectives and principles of the future gas strategy, including supporting decarbonisation of the Australian.
Is that the preamble
economy.
or the terms of reference?
So it is it was being very clear that the specific focus of the review was on the specific elements in achieving the overall government objectives. So I don't think the characterisation is not that the government's overall decarbonisation objectives were not included in the terms of reference. They definitely were in the terms of reference.
But they're not one of the A to H terms of reference?
Because they were very specific things that all needed to be considered in the context of achieving the government's decarbonisation objectives and the principles of the future gas strategy, which was clearly to achieve net zero by 2050.
Okay,
and so the way I would characterise it is that they were a narrower, looking at the regulatory architecture that would deliver within the commitment to achieve net zero.
Thank you. Look, I don't see how new gas achieves decarbonisation, but thanks for the clarification. It's been a few days since I've asked this, and I think I was directed to ask it here as well, but or maybe I wasn't asked, but I'm choosing to. Is a tax on gas exports on the table?
So that is a matter for the Australian Treasury, who look at taxation policy.
And do you consult with them on these sorts of proposals?
Yes, we talk to each other about but they own the tax regulatory policy regime, particularly.
I understand that. But have you provided advice to them on this particular?
As I understand it, the last time we had detailed conversations around the reforms to the petroleum. PRRT,
resource rent tax.
Petroleum resource rent tax, which was some years ago. There was detailed analysis and work jointly in that, and there would be some follow-ups on those sorts of things. That was the last time there was significant engagement between the two departments.
When was that? Sorry,
I have to check, but it was I think about 3 years ago. From recollection, but happy to take on notice it was the changes to the PRRT that were announced by the Treasurer in a budget at some stage.
That's right. I think it was 2023, but we can correct that if on notice if I'm wrong.
Yeah, thank you. And I suppose maybe for the Minister, I'm really keen to I think many Australians are keen to get a firm understanding of whether this proposal is being taken seriously when we consider that the epic rip-off of these gas exports, pumping up our domestic prices, paying minimal export tax, and even if we have a gas reservation policy, it just means companies meet their supply obligations and then continue to ship the majority of gas overseas, while the broken petroleum resources rent tax provides basically zero compensation to everyday Australians. It feels that the fact this hasn't been examined for 4 years when it is such a, it is most certainly in the public interest to be exploring this, warrants some reflection.
The intervention that Minister Bowen and I are unable to announce it with the Resources Minister, but it was an announcement of hers that we were that there was a decision to deliver a reservation strategy is a very substantial intervention into the Australian gas market. It's been talked about for 25 years but never delivered. And we've had a gas market that has not operated in the interests of Australians. It is a very significant intervention. In terms of taxation matters, I don't want to direct you back in time to the Treasury crowd, but they'd be delighted to, I'm sure, answer your questions about these matters. The industry pays $11.8 billion in 23-24, I think it was, in tax receipts. It's not nothing. It's not nothing. So they meet their obligations there. I understand the argument that is made around the place, but that is the focus that the government's really on at the moment is the most significant intervention in a generation into this market.
We should return to Treasury next time.
You're at 10 minutes.
Can I have a few more minutes to finish too, please?
Just a couple more and then I need to rotate.
Yeah, I won't be much longer. On a related but slightly different topic, the acreage that's just been released for exploration, expressions of interest in the Otway Basin in my home state of Victoria, is this in direct response to the supposed need to find supply for Australia's east coast?
It's certainly consistent with the future gas strategy, which had a element to ensure that future acreages were near other acreage releases and took into account the information that's available to the market. So it's very consistent with that direction set out in the future gas strategy. It is the case that there are forecast reductions in gaps in supply for the East Coast market, and there will be a need for an expansion of supply to meet expected demand. So it's part of the overall future gas strategy, which was to release acreages in an efficient and effective way. Just pass to my colleague if you'd like to add anything.
The only thing I'd add, thank you, Secretary, is that yes, it is consistent with the future gas strategy, and the release in the Otway region is certainly in the right part of Australia in terms of those depleting gas fields. So it is certainly well positioned vis-a-vis the gas fields that are quickly depleting.
And I know Minister King did recently cede to community pressure to make a modest extension to community consultation on that devastating potential project. But when theoretically, assuming approvals can take a variety of expected timeframes, would you expect companies to be pumping gas from these new fields? And I know ballpark is absolutely fine, and there are a number of variables, but do you have a vision for when that would potentially start?
I mean, it's really difficult for us to be able to make those determinations, and because there's various steps and regulatory barriers in there. I'm not sure it's appropriate for us to preempt any of those regulatory
This decade,
decisions.
though, do you think it could feasibly happen this decade?
It largely depends on the geology and the capability of the enterprises and the regulatory approvals needed. And so there's
no guarantee it could actually be happening in time for the supposed 2028 shortfall.
These projects can take quite a long time. Other ones can be much quicker, depending on how they link to existing infrastructure, which goes back to depends on the geology, location, depends on the capability of the enterprises and the regulatory regime. I wouldn't want to speculate on a timing.
Yeah, and I know I've got to finish up, but I've one more question, then I'll put the others on notice with your indulgence, Chair. Minister, will you commit to requiring all companies with gas infrastructure coming offline and already offline in the Bass Strait to properly decommission these and clean up their mess before we allow new gas fields to open by those same companies? Is there any commitment there?
Well, I think we won't allow the department to outline what the obligations are and what the progress is in relation to those questions. But you know, as the Secretary outlined, all those obligations must be complied with. But the energy market operator is forecasting gas shortfalls for East Coast Gas in that period from 27 through to 29 now.
We're hearing that they very likely won't even be operational by then.
And in the meantime, but this is a step towards making sure that we're doing all of the things alongside that reservation strategy to make sure that we're delivering for heavy industry in particular, but making sure that Australian gas is there in the Australian interest.
And so perhaps to your colleagues then around the clean-up, we've got Victorians contacting me saying they're finding pieces of rigs washing up on the beaches of Victoria. This is going to cost billions of dollars over the next decade. Do you think that's okay? And can you provide an update on that decommissioning, please?
Thanks, Senator. So under the law, the offshore petroleum industry has an obligation to decommission projects, and the costs of that need to be borne by them, not the Australian community. There's been a number of reforms over recent years to further strengthen that decommissioning requirement under the law. So absolutely, it's the case that companies who are making profit, as they should, in investing and extracting the natural resources, also have the obligation to pack up when they finish that project and do it in an environmentally sustainable way, and that is certainly the requirement under the law.
Yeah, okay. I suppose it's one thing to have obligations and another thing to actually put them into practice. And hopefully we don't need this new gas beyond 2030 with renewable energies transition, and it doesn't just become another corporate handout. But thank you for your time.
And the regulations are enforced by a regulator in the sense of the NOPTA, who will be here shortly, and they have the regulatory obligation to make sure people are complying.
We'll watch and wait. Thanks.
Thanks. Senator McDonald.
Thanks very much, Chair. Ms. Osenlinsky, I won't ask you to come forward again because of our time pressures, but on notice you're going to expand on the modelling for the projects, and I'd like you to specifically reference the updated data from the IEA that was released just a month after the net zero transition report was released, please. Ms. Quinn, was the... Don't worry, I'm going to put all that on notice. Minister, I want to ask you about the new EPBC legislations that blocks projects, gas projects from streamlined pathways at the same time that we know that there's projected shortfalls for gas. Was the Resources Minister consulted at any point during the negotiations with the Greens?
Well, I think the original assertion that you made, I think Mr Jeremenko has dealt with in some substance.
Well, the question is, was the Resources
so
Minister
the foundation
consulted?
of your question really is
well, no,
really is
I think you're
undermined.
trying to project my question. My question is, was the Resources Minister consulted during the negotiations with the Greens Party?
Of course she was.
Thank you. No, I just saw that somebody else had given you that assurance, so I'm pleased that you were then able to feel confident.
I want to make sure that I'm characterising how that consultation happens properly.
So how did that consultation, how can you characterise that as being taken properly?
In the normal way that a cabinet-style government makes those kind of decisions.
Oh, well, no, specifically, how was that consultation carried out? Was it a conversation in the hallway? Was it a formalised meeting between the Resources Minister and the Environment Minister?
If we can provide any additional information, I mean, they talk regularly. We all do. We are colleagues and friends. There's a sort of collaborative effort here to do things in the national interest. This may...
No, I'm so pleased because on Tuesday we discovered that the Agricultural Department were not involved in the drafting nor given advance briefings on the government's amendments to the EPBC legislation, which impacted their farmers.
We're in resources now. If you have an agriculture question, I'm sure...
Well, no, I did, and this is my
to,
point. I'm delighted to hear that
you.
the Resources Minister was provided with more consultation than the Agricultural Minister, but that will be...
I have.
We did canvass that at length, didn't we?
Not to take on face value assertions about what might have happened in previous
I do want to
estimates.
clarify that she was part of the consultation prior to the decision going to Cabinet.
On the EPBC Act reforms, there was a full Cabinet process.
No, prior to the Cabinet, so that was the Resources Minister informed and consulted and engaged with prior to the decision, or was the first she saw of it was sitting around the cabinet table or reading the cabinet papers before she walked in.
I don't know what you've heard about how the Morrison cabinet worked.
No,
Senator
Minister,
McDonald.
that was not my question. My question was whether or not the Minister was suitably consulted with prior to it turning up in the cabinet papers.
It happened
that is my question.
in the normal way in a proper cabinet-style government.
But that's what we're asking. I'm asking, was it the normal way? So you're confirming...
I think I just answered it.
So just to be clear, you're confirming that the Minister was consulted prior to the cabinet papers being developed?
It is a normal cabinet process where decisions
That's not
are
my
made.
question, Minister.
Decisions are made in a normal, adult, grown-up kind of way. I'm not at liberty to describe.
I want to know, perhaps you could ask your advisors behind you again, was the Minister consulted prior to the cabinet papers being produced for her to look at?
As tempting as it is for me to answer your question to satisfy you,
it is the process that at estimates I ask the questions so that you can satisfy the questioner. Well, that's true. Why start now?
I really, I have been distracted actually by an interview I'd never seen before of Senator Canavan in 2019, but more of that later.
More of that later, indeed.
It's quite diverting.
Ms. Quinn.
Quite diverting.
Ms. Quinn.
A lot of time living in the past, Minister.
Indeed.
It's
Ms.
quite,
Quinn,
it's
can
quite
I ask
diverting.
you?
It's
a lot of time in his head.
We're a long way from Kansas now, Toto.
You want to put the rent up.
About 36 minutes to go.
Thank you.
We've also got another outcome and NOPTA.
Indeed, and I will have to stay later if we're not.
No, we're not staying past 11 o'clock.
Well, we'll have to come back for a spillover.
Well, that's in the people's hands here.
Well, that's how I feel.
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
we've been here all day,
Indeed.
and your colleagues have been taking quite a while to go through the questions they had. So, anyway, keep going.
Thank you. Ms. Quinn, did you consult with the gas industry during your development of the new arrangements with the EPBC legislation and the Greens?
So we've had ongoing and extensive discussion with the gas industry about different ways to streamline regulation, their concerns around environmental regulation, their concerns around the consultation requirements under the offshore gas legislation. So we know what the industry largely thinks about things. We were not directly responsible for the drafting of the legislation, the specific elements of the EPBC Act. That negotiations or discussions would have been done by that department. But I just want to be very clear that we were aware of the development of the legislation. We were aware of the policy issues. We did work with our Department of Environment colleagues through all the various iterations of the EPBC Act reforms, and there was a very extensive process of making sure that everyone understood what the implications were and what the options were. And we certainly fed in views from the from industry side and the science side and the resources side. Okay, so DISA, your department did approve of the removal of the streamlining gas from the streamlining provisions. So we certainly supported the improvement to the streamlining arrangements. Okay, absolutely. And the removal of gas from that. So that's a separate kind of issue. So same issue. Was DISA part of the development of the removal of the gas sector from the streamlining provisions? So we supported the intent of the EPBC Act. We certainly supported the streamlining of the regulations between the two acts. The issue about the choices of government between what's in the streamlining and not is a matter for government. Okay, I've got no idea what you've just said then, whether or not you were just fudging around the removal of the streamlining provisions for the gas industry or not, and I will put the rest of my questions on this section on notice. So just to be really clear, it wasn't the removal of the streamlining, it was maintaining streamlining. Just to be really clear, it specifically rules out the gas sector from the streamlining provisions. Maybe we're using the streamlining word in two different ways. When I mean streamlining, I'm talking about the concurrence between the EPBC Act and the Offshore Gas Act. I'm talking about the EPBC provisions which specifically remove gas from the streamlining. Right, we're at cross purposes then, sorry.
well, you're at cross purposes to me, which is that I'm
asking
asking
there's two streamlining
you,
elements here.
Okay, I'm asking you about the removal of the gas industry from the streamline provisions as is specifically spelt out in the EPBC amendments or the legislation that was passed in December as part of the agreement with the Greens Party.
So our assessment was that the reform is a net positive for the oil and gas sector.
Excellent. Is that what the industry says to you, Ms Quinn?
You guys had your chance.
I hadn't asked you a question, Minister.
Decided to
Ms Quinn, is that
isolated.
what the industry said?
Industry, as I understand it, recognise that there's an improvement in the new EPBC Act regulations. They would have liked some other elements in it, but the net effect of the regulations is superior to the previous regulatory regime that applied to the oil and gas sector.
Excellent. So they're delighted with the changes.
Relative to the previous arrangements that were judged by the Samuels report to be not fit for purpose.
All right. That's different to what they told me, but that's okay. I want to ask you about how the new EPBC reforms engage with the existing OPGGS legislation. Will the NOPSEMA approvals continue to be accredited through the OPGGS legislation, or will these additional requirements be imposed on offshore projects as a result of the new reforms?
Senator, they will still be, at the risk of using that word again, streamlining, the existing arrangements where NOPSEMA plays the role that it does in terms of the environmental approval continue, and the EPBC amendments enable the Environment Minister to effectively consider that NOPSEMA approval and make sure that there is not the requirement for an additional approval process to be carried out by the Environment Minister. So that is certainly a case that NOPSEMA retains that.
So will the OPGGS Act be amended to reflect these new EPBC changes, or will the OPGGS Act remain detached from the EPBC process?
So that level of detail is what we are actually working through in the with the goal of providing that clarity that I mentioned before for both the industry and First Nations peoples on the extent of consultation that is required for environmental plans. And so that, the exact mechanism of how that happens is being worked through, and we'll provide advice to government, but the crucial first step was passing those EPBC amendments.
Okay, so is it an option to remove OPGGS Act approval and put it all through the EPBC? For offshore, of course.
Well, that's going to the level of detail that would be in our policy advice to ministers. So.
The intention is to avoid duplication.
Okay.
So that is the policy intent of the detailed work that's being done now.
As it stands currently then, will NOPSEMA be required to remove streamlined pathways for offshore projects?
So the process that exists currently for NOPSEMA in terms of its approvals for environmental approvals under the OPGGS Act will not require separate approvals under the EPBC Act as a result of these changes. So that is a positive, and that is something that industry had been seeking, and the risk of that being reversed and unlinked was that these amendments were not made, because any subsequent change in the future, including this one that I've referenced that we're working on in terms of advice to government, would break that link and would require a duplication of process with the Environment Minister.
All right, I'll put the remainder of my questions on that on notice.
Yeah. In practice, sorry, just to be very kind of clear, because I think it's where you're going to. In practice, NOPSEMA is the sole regulator for offshore petroleum and gas storage exploration activities.
Thank you. I want to turn to the East Coast Gas Reservation. Minister, I want to begin with the government's approach to intervention in the East Coast gas market. The ACCC forecasting indicates potential gas shortfalls emerging from as early as QT 2026. Given those timeframes, how will a prospective reservation model which I know you're still designing, avoid exacerbating shortages, particularly when industry has constantly raised concerns about declining investment confidence?
Well, it will be a national gas reservation scheme. That is what the government announced. Of course, the shortage questions that you referred to are most acute on the East Coast. We are going to do this in an orderly way. That means that we have begun the work. It will occur in 2026. It'll be done in consultation with industry and experts. It'll examine all of those issues that you point to and be all about making sure that Australian gas is there for Australians.
Okay. So as you're considering these specific reservation models, what assessment has been undertaken of their respective impacts on supply, pricing and investment behaviour? I'm trying to get to whether or not you have a preference for a punitive compliance model, or are you considering an incentive-based approach like tax credits, financial offsets to encourage additional supply into the domestic market?
We're going through a proper consultation process. Government will make decisions in the normal way. We'll take into account some, if not all, of those competing challenges, competing and overlapping challenges that you've outlined.
Has work begun with industry on assessing these different models?
Well, certainly between our department and DQ, the work has commenced in addition to Treasury, Home Affairs, PM&C. It's very much a cross-government operation to work through the detail of the options that might sit behind the reservation, the announced domestic gas reservation of between 15 to 25. So there will be consultation with industry, but that is going to kick off very shortly.
Okay,
but
thank you.
Just to be clear that this is a continuation of discussion with the industry because the gas market review itself recommended the government consider such a scheme.
Okay.
So there was already discussions ongoing.
Now, given that the government's modelling that was released last year talks about gas and LNG falling, even under the most conservative models, by 24% by 2035 and 66% by 2050, and yet the IEA updated models shows an increase in gas production. Do you think that, I guess I'm just trying to check in that Australia is going to remain in line with world requirements, given that we've signed the Belém Declaration, given that we've got a future gas strategy that talks about declining gas demand? How are you encouraging additional gas investment in line with the projections of gas growth?
Well, one of the key principles, of course, that guides the development of this strategy is very clear. It says that the reservation scheme should provide long-term certainty for commercial production and investment. We've been very clear as well as a government that existing domestic and international contracts will be respected. We made the announcement very carefully.
So in practical terms, what does the government consider an oversupply to be? How will you quantify that? And how will the risk of price suppression be managed, particularly for smaller operators who are operating on marginal returns?
So that is the technical work that we're being asked to undertake in terms of the design parameters. And so that is work we're doing now.
Okay. I mean, I'm very interested to understand that we get this right, given that we had the gas market intervention several years ago, which resulted in the minister having to exempt everybody from the price cap. So I am...
Well, I mean, I'll get Mr Jeremico maybe to explain how all that worked. I'm not sure that that's a bad outcome. I mean, there was
that we passed legislation that threw industry into turmoil.
Working with the framework that we had.
Investment froze. And then the Minister, as we warned, had to again intervene in the market by providing exemptions to operators, is all that I'm referring to, Minister. And we don't have time to re-prosecute the failure of that legislative solution.
We could talk about competing records all night in this area, but...
well, that is the most recent, and we can only be judged...
A decade of inertia, and now moving to a generational reform in the gas market.
That is your record in the term of this Albanese government. So you can look back as far as you look, but you're being judged by your actions right now. I will turn to... okay.
Will we get to the next outcome and NOPSEMA?
Well, I thought they were all being smushed together. NOPSEMA is supposed to be in the room right now. Are they not in the room right now?
They are.
Yes,
they are. Okay, right. So, they haven't been called, but I do know that there are questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was told that everybody would be in the room together, so I hadn't tried to separate it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it was my misunderstanding. Then, sorry. I thought it's fine. Just keep going.
Thank you. I will put that on notice.
Senator, given the Minister invited me to contribute just briefly while you're coming to your next question.
To go.
The ministerial exemptions
talk about
under the code.
I'm sorry. Could we talk about AWA now? I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Jeremenko. I want to talk about AWA's budget. Is anybody from AWA here?
Yes.
Terrific. Mr. Usher. Mr. Usher, I would like to talk to you about your budget and specifically information provided to me on a question on notice S1166. I want to confirm that radioactive waste is allocated 266.019 million in administered and departmental funding from 25-26 to 29-30.
I'm very sorry, can I just ask for the reference number again?
Quan S1166.
Sam Usher, I'm the Chief Executive of the Australian Radioactive Waste Agency. The administered funding which has been allocated for radioactive waste management from 25-26 to 29-30 is a total of $46 million. The departmental funding allocated to the Department for Radioactive Waste Management over the same period is a total of $220 million.
The MyEFO measure, there was a $2 million reduction in funding to nuclear waste as part of the savings measures in MyEFO. So that's the only change in funding for this function.
So a $2 million reduction from the 46 million to 44 million.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Also $2 million in 27-28.
Thank you. Mr. Usher, the $266 million, what is your work program now? What are you going to spend that on?
So the departmental funding funds it undertakes a number of things. It provides for the enduring waste management function, the functions and the management of the radioactive waste function. Within that, we undertake a number of activities. Our focus at the moment is on providing advice to government on to inform decisions on disposal pathways for all of the Commonwealth civilian and legacy defence waste. We're focused on near-surface disposal and progressing the request for information, which was launched in October last year. And also for geological disposal, we're doing work on design concepts and screening criteria. We're also working on an update to the Australian Radioactive Waste Management Framework, which the last version of that was in 2018, and it's appropriate that the government updates its policy objectives and goals for radioactive waste management.
Okay.
We also provide advice to waste owners on their radioactive waste management, including the Australian Submarine Agency, and providing support to their program looking at disposal of end-of-life waste from the submarine program.
Terrific.
We're also undertaking work on a national social licence strategy, which will inform approaches to siting for as and when disposal pathways are determined.
Okay, so you're not working on any actual locations currently? The policy framework?
We're not in a current siting process.
Last time we spoke, you said that you didn't have control over the budget because the 220 odd million was the department's allocation. Does that remain the case? You're just working within the $42 million envelope?
So the department receives funding from the government to fulfil the radioactive waste management function. That funding is allocated both directly and indirectly. Many of the services and the support that we do undertaking are provided centrally by the department and is funded in that way. As per every other division within the department, there's nothing different from other divisions in that way.
Thank you, Mr. Usher. Could I ask the NOPTA representatives to come forward now, please? We are moving at pace. Ms. Quinn, given that the department's got $220 million for this radioactive waste plan, but the department's not looking at sites either, seems a lot of money to have over the next 4 years and not have a site.
So the government has committed to ensuring that the function is funded to undertake the activity that's required.
So you're ready to spend the money, but you just don't have a plan yet.
So the government there is a request for information out around the elements of the requirement to store nuclear waste, and you might be aware it takes a great deal of effort to build capability and capacity to be able to do the more complex geological kind of storage. So we are investing in capability, ensuring we've got the ability to deliver the function for government. Right. We are also diligently ensuring that we're looking after the funding and only spending what's needed.
Does that mean additional ASL when you talk about developing the capability?
So we have, certainly ALWA has expanded its staff in recent times to build capability. Whether it needs to going forward is a review point. I mentioned earlier today we review requirements every 6 months, but certainly ALWA has built capability, including recruiting people from overseas with the deep capability that's required in Australia.
Okay. Turning to NOPTA, I note that in November of 25, NOPTA released its cost recovery implementation statement, in which you proposed an increase in levies and fees from the 1st of May 2026 to meet ongoing operational costs for a range of reasons, and you're going to increase levies, so a little more than doubling the petroleum exploration levies, infrastructure licence levies 30,000 to 36,000, pipeline licence levies, increased GHG levies. Are these increases still scheduled for introduction on the 1st of May 2026?
Stephen Taylor, Acting General Manager for NOPTA. Senator, as you said, we consulted with industry on the proposed changes to the CRIS during November. That consultation is now closed. We've received 2 responses to that. We've now provided advice to the Minister in relation to taking those changes forward.
So are you still scheduled to introduce them for the 1st of May 2026?
The exact timing is uncertain at this point.
Okay. What steps has NOPTA taken to reduce costs and find efficiencies in your operations?
Senator, we look at the costs associated with the activities that we need to undertake and on an ongoing basis look at what the activities are and requirements are from industry to administer the Act and provide advice under our functions and look to maintain those costs at a reasonable level.
What work has NOPTA done to assess the impact of, for example, doubling the levies for exploration levies? Petroleum exploration levies. What has NOPTA done to assess the impact of these increases on small explorers and producers?
Senator, that's part of the reasoning behind the consultation process to draw out comments from industry in relation to the proposed changes. We received 2 responses in response to that consultation period, and those have been taken into consideration in providing advice to the Minister.
How have your staffing levels and workload changed in recent years to result in these levy increases?
The nature of the work is changing over time, and also the nature and makeup of the industry is changing as well. So the balance of the number of titles and the focus of those titles is changing, and hence the work and the nature of work and the nature of the skill sets required to do that are changing over time.
Okay. On notice, would you please provide me with some more detail around that description of the nature of the work and the nature of the skill sets, please?
Certainly.
Thank you very much, Mr Taylor.
Just note, Minister, there's a scheduled review of NOPTA required under the legislation for it to be reviewed on a regular basis. And so the next review is due shortly, and that will be an opportunity for us to look at the operation of NOPTA, efficiency improvements, changes in its arrangements to try and reduce the burden on industry and improve the efficiency of the operation. So that will be coming up in the next 12 months, and that's an opportunity for us to really deep dive into adoption of new technology, efficiencies, digital technologies, for example, that could help streamline and reduce costs.
Terrific, thank you. Thanks, Mr Taylor. That's all from me on that. Would we be able to see Ms McCarry?
Senator McDonald, we've got 11 minutes until we're closing, so...
Watching how quickly I'm moving?
I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just making sure we keep to time, and we're going well.
I'm putting stuff on notice.
Great.
I'm moving at pace,
Appreciate
Chair.
that.
Thank you. Hello, Ms McCarry. How are you?
Good evening, Senator.
Terrific. I wanted to ask you about what role will the new EPA have in engaging with NOPSEMA?
Senator, thank you for the question. Sue McCarry, Chief Executive Officer of NOPSEMA. At this stage, a formal role, not necessarily. I think once the final arrangements are made under the EPBC Act and the details that are laid out in the declaration that was actually referred to earlier by the department, that will actually give us the detail as to how it will work. But I think, as the department stated, the intent is for NOPSEMA to become the offshore regulator for oil and gas.
My grandfather used to quote that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So let's hope the department's intentions don't lead us to hell, hey?
That should be government and the legislative intention.
The government, well, let's hope that the government and the legislative intention doesn't lead us to hell. So at the moment you don't have clarity on what role the new EPA will have in its engagement with you, with NOPSEMA.
Senator, no, that will come out in the detail of the declaration, but I think, as been stated, the actual intent of the government and the changes was actually that NOPSEMA take on the role to regulate offshore oil and gas so that things are much more streamlined in that space.
So, okay, so then the EPA won't have jurisdiction in the offshore space, it will remain solely with NOPSEMA.
My understanding is that's the intent.
That's the intent. Okay. Was NOPSEMA consulted during the process of the development of the EPBC legislation and the reforms, and specifically around that final push that came with the last few days of negotiations with the Greens?
Not so much through the negotiation, Senator, no. That's actually a matter for government, but certainly in the development of the changes, that was led by DQ, Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment, Water. They consulted with DISA, and DISA always reach out to us to have a look at what the impacts may be. So yes, we were consulted during that development phase, but not in those final stages when it was before Parliament.
Okay. I'm interested in what interaction there will be for NOPSEMA with the new EPA CEO. There was quite a bit of discussion about the CEO's appointment. I know you've told me that it's the intention of the government and the department, but what the government and the legislation, I'm sorry, Ms Quinn, so what do you expect your engagement will be with the EPA CEO?
Not so much the CEO, Senator. Under the new arrangement, should it go through as we expect, there will be amendments as stated to the OPGGS Act, but also will be a requirement in that for us to produce an annual report to the Minister for the Environment.
Okay. Right, so that will be an additional role that you'll have to do. Okay. Do you see that there'll be new ASL to do that?
Not just for that report, no, Senator.
Okay, that's terrific. Have you been made aware of when potential reforms to the OPGGS Act will occur?
No, Senator, as you've just gone through, that's actually a role for the department. They actually consult with us, so we work very closely with DISA on the impacts of any changes. But having said that, we have actually started doing some work internally at NOPSEMA, just looking at what might need to change in our internal operating procedures and the processes we follow, just to make sure that we are ready for those changes when they come along.
Okay. Okay, so you're considering what the impacts of those changes will be?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, so you've got some sense of that. Okay. So how would you describe the impacts on NOPSEMA as far as your current workload and activities?
Senator, it will be an additional workload for us, but not perhaps as extensive as one might think. We have actually been working closely with DQ over many years. We have a deed arrangement with DQ where, as part of their approval processes, they will, through that deed, come to us for advice on specific issues, particularly around particular management of environment issues. So we have been working closely with them on a number of those approvals. It will now come to us to do that entire approval, so obviously there's a little more work, but not perhaps as extensive as what you may think.
Okay, that's good to hear. No doubt you've come prepared with your schedule of number of projects being assessed and average time considered. Would you, in the remaining 5 minutes, like to read through that, please?
I can, and what I've decided to do is always calculate the statistics now at the end of a quarter, so that way it helps in future times to make some comparisons. I can actually tell you that for the full calendar year of 2024, the average time frame for an EP was 342 days. As of the end of December 2025, in the calendar year, it was 306 days. So we actually had quite a drop. And just to let you know, as a part of that, in the 306 days for the 2025 calendar year, there were 111 of those days the assessment was sitting with NOPSEMA. 195 days it was sitting with the duty holder to actually make changes to then respond to questions and issues that we raised.
How have you gone with the number of times that an applicant has to come back to you, or the number of times, I'm sorry, I'll go the other way, that you go back to an applicant with additional requests for information?
Look, in some cases that has improved. I think I've talked here before about programs we've run to be giving feedback to duty holders in the industry of common issues and common problems we see in the documentation. But it does differ. It differs from duty holder to duty holder. It differs from project to project. But we constantly give that feedback as to where we see that changes need to be made, so that they've got a better chance of actually getting it through more quickly.
And do you think that number of requests for information is falling? Because we've had a conversation before about these being sophisticated operators and repeat applicants. So do you think that NOPSEMA is getting better with that communications pipeline and being able to ask the questions, more of the questions at the beginning, to reduce the number of subsequent requests?
Look, that's certainly our intent, Senator, and we are providing a lot of information to try and ensure that the information is provided up front, but it's not always the case.
Okay. How's that, Chair?
Fantastic. 3 minutes.
Just quickly ask.
3 minutes.
I just want to go to these coal and gas forecasts in the modelling, and as we highlighted earlier,
in the Treasury modelling.
In the Treasury modelling, and as we highlighted earlier.
You can ask, and I'll direct you to the Treasury.
Well, I've got a question for you. Just
Okay.
wait. So the Treasury modelling showed a roughly 70% drop in coal demand by 2050. Just days after, in fact, 3 days after that Treasury modelling was released, the IEA released its draft current policy scenarios, which showed coal only dropping in their current policy scenario by 26%, I think. I just calculated before, 26%, and 50% the stated policy, so way, way below what Treasury have assumed. My question is, did the IEA consult with the Australian government about its draft 2025 WEO forecasts before they were released on the 19th of September?
I'll wait for my colleague to join me. She may have some additional information, but I just want to correct a few framing elements of your question. As I understand it, the Treasury modelling looked at different scenarios, not forecasts. They called them projections, and there's a whole explanation for why that is.
Semantics at 11 p.m. But yep.
Yes, projections change depending on what's happening. The Australian government does engage with the IEA. We have members there. We part of subcommittees and all the rest of it. So,
did you see the draft 2025 World Energy, or did the government, anyone in the government, see the draft 2025 World Energy Outlook forecasts before the 18th September last year?
I will have to take that on notice.
Okay. Because I just note that Treasury in their modelling say explicitly that on the basis of IEA forecasts, Australia's coal production is projected to decrease by at least 42% to 2035 and 71% to 2050.
Yeah, so not
I'm just
forecasts,
struggling to
but scenarios,
understand,
because
that published on the 18th September.
Yeah.
And it would be very, very surprising to me if the Australian government, someone in the Australian government, did not know that the IEA was going to publish something completely different within weeks.
So there's different scenarios. The IEA does different scenarios, and Treasury picked up particular scenarios for their analysis. We've taken on notice how we engage with the IEA on their work. There's lots of different ways they connect with us, and we're happy to take it on notice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bang on 11 o'clock. That concludes the session. I remind senators that the committee has agreed that any written questions on notice should be lodged with the Secretariat by Friday, February 20. The committee stands adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.